Chapter 91. Feng Luan looked at the scene in front of him, but he had no intention of talking to Gu Nan. All his attention was attracted by Lin Yunyun. To be precise, it was the green light that was constantly emitting from between Lin Yunyun's eyebrows. The blue round stone in front of Feng Luan's chest also began to glow and float slowly. The god's stone fragment, Lan Ta blurted out in surprise. He quickly turned to Feng Luan and said, "Your Highness, your clear water god stone is still missing 3 fragments. That girl is the natural carrier of the fragments and also your natural servant." "My servant?" Feng Luan asked in confusion. "That's right. Her power was given by the god stone, so she's naturally your most loyal servant." Feng Luan's eyes lit up. "Then what should I do?" "You just have to get close to her and completely awaken the fragments in her body," Lan Ta said while looking at Gu Nan. "Please leave this person to me." He stood in front of Gu Nan with a straight face, ready to attack as soon as the latter made a move. However, Gu Nan merely smiled faintly and did not seem to have any intention of attacking at all. That made him feel puzzled. On the other hand, he had already ignored the 3 tails behind Gu Nan. Feng Luan was delighted to see that Gu Nan did not make a move, so he hurriedly walked forward. Indeed, with every step he took, he saw that the light between the girl's eyebrows became more intense, and the throbbing of the round stone in front of his chest became more obvious. The existence of the god's stone fragment made him feel a natural sense of familiarity with the girl in front of him. Besides, Lan Ta had also told him that the girl would be his servant. Servant. Tsk. Young Master Feng, who used to be a playboy, could not help but feel excited. By the time he walked in front of Lin Yunyun, the green light between Lin Yunyun's eyebrows had already completely lit up, and it even seemed like it was going to leave her body. Feng Luan subconsciously reached out to grab it, and the green light seemed to have taken the initiative to cooperate with him. It suddenly jumped up from Lin Yunyun's forehead and was about to jump into Feng Luan's hand. "That's it." Feng Luan heard 4 cold words. That familiar voice made him feel as if he had fallen into an icehouse. Before Feng Luan could react, a hand grabbed the green light. Feng Luan felt a familiar gust of wind, just like that day. Bang! The giant shadow hand appeared again, and history seemed to be repeating itself. Young Master Feng didn't even get a chance to grunt before he was sent flying. Of course, he didn't suffer a heavy injury this time because Lan Ta had finally reacted and caught him firmly. "Your Highness, are you all right?" Lan Ta's dark face was slightly red. Gu Nan's speed was too fast for him to react. Feng Luan seemed to have reached the most critical juncture and was interrupted by someone. He angrily said, "Didn't you say that you could stop him? Trash. All of you are trash." "What did you say?" Lan Si was not convinced in his heart. Hearing his brother being scolded, he could not help but speak up. The embarrassment on Lan Ta's face became even more obvious. He stopped his sister with a look and said in a low voice, "It's my fault. Your Highness, please give me a chance to redeem myself." "Why wouldn't I give you a chance? If you have the ability, go and kill him." Feng Luan was about to go crazy with anger. "Okay." Lan Ta nodded solemnly. As the 3 of them spoke, Gu Nan played with the god's stone fragment in his hand, a look of interest on his face. To be honest, he had killed many gods in his previous life and dug out their godhood. However, this was the first time he had seen such a damaged natural godhood. Natural godhood was too rare, and the conditions for its birth were extremely harsh. Artificially cultivating it was even more troublesome than directly killing a god. Thus, in his previous life, no player had done such a thing. Seeing his actions, Lan Ta flew into a rage and said, "Scoundrel, put down the god's stone fragment immediately. Otherwise, the wrath of my master will swoosh." His voice reminded Gu Nan, so the latter raised his hand and slashed. Blood flashed. Lan Ta's words were blocked, and his face was about to turn red. However, he had no choice but to raise his hand and summon a blue light shield. The blade fell, but it was blocked firmly by the shield. It did not even make a splash. This was the first time since Gu Nan's blood blade had appeared in the world that he had returned without achieving anything. Lan Ta sneered. This is a divine skill bestowed by my master. How can a mortal like you break through it? The corner of Gu Nan's mouth curled up in a mocking smile. However, his movements were not slow, and he slashed 9 times in a row. It was worth mentioning that each of his 9 slashes was in a different position. It seemed to be intentional. At the beginning, these 9 slashes were as useless as the first slash. However, the second slash began to make the shield tremble slightly. Every subsequent slash caused the shield to tremble more intensely, until finally it shattered with a loud bang. Lan Ta watched all of this dumbfounded. He could clearly see that every slash of his opponent landed on the divine power nodes of the divine skill. Because the divine skill was bestowed by the gods and not his own power, he could not adjust it. Lan Ta's divine power was instantly destroyed. It surged wildly in his body, and he could not control it at all. This is impossible, Lan Ta said with difficulty as he felt the chaotic divine power in his body. The next moment, Gu Nan's blade had already pierced into his abdomen. He then grinned. Nothing is impossible. I'm more familiar with Lorenza's divine skills than you are. Brother! His sister's heart-wrenching cries rang in his ears, but Lan Ta's vision gradually blurred. He had not even dreamed that he would be killed by a simple divine skill that he had yet to use. His divine power had been destroyed, and he had been killed by a simple divine skill. I still have more than 10 powerful divine skills, and I still have the grace of the Mother Goddess. I still have several divine tools that can preserve my life. Unfortunately, without divine power, the gods' messengers were useless. After stabbing Lan Ta to death, Gu Nan only curled his lips, his expression indifferent. In the game in his previous life, God's messengers were also a very unique type of monster. On one hand, they were strong and had all kinds of divine skills. On the other hand, their skills were very rigid and far less flexible than normal 3rd or 4th grade ones. Thus, the most efficient way to kill God's messengers was to trick them into using a defensive divine skill and then target them to disperse their divine power. Against the enemy, of course, one had to find a way to kill them in one blow. The idea of waiting for the enemy to unleash their ultimate move before fighting to the death was truly idiotic. Gu Nan slowly shifted his gaze back to Lan Si and Feng Luan. Lan Si's face was already covered in tears. She screamed and rushed forward, but Gu Nan casually grabbed her by the neck and pressed her to the ground. After being stunned for 3 seconds, Feng Luan suddenly let out a strange cry and rushed out without a care for his life. Gu Nan did not chase after him. He still had use for Feng Luan. This young Master Feng was the best target to lure out the other fragment. If he had the God Stone, few people would dare to attack. When Feng Luan's figure disappeared, Gu Nan slowly bent down and grabbed Lan Si's hair, a strange smile on his face. Chapter 92. The smell of blood filled the laboratory. Without the suppression of the God Stone fragment, the internal energy in Lin Yunyun's body began to stabilize and transform her body continuously. 3 Last was standing beside her, helping her to calm down the true qi. On the other hand, Gu Nan stood in front of Lan Si and looked down at her. Dream on! Lan Si was like an enraged lioness as she glared at Gu Nan and roared maniacally. You damned heretic! My lord will punish you and make you fall into the abyss forever. The young girl cursed Gu Nan with her most vicious words. After all, she just thought that the natives of the heavenly world were not qualified to be recognized by the God Stone, but it did not mean that her faith was not firm. As someone who grew up in the kingdom of flowers, Lan Si was also a fanatic believer of the god of flowers. Fall into the abyss forever? Lorenza herself can only go down to the 50th level of the abyss. Anything further than that is beyond the reach of your mother goddess. Gu Nan pursed his lips and chuckled. Lorenzo was the name of the god of flowers. Lan Si finally realized that something was wrong after Gu Nan mentioned her twice. Why does this native know the name of Mother Goddess? However, Gu Nan did not give her a chance to ask questions. He pressed his hand on her head and knocked her out under the power of shadows. It was basically impossible to instigate such a fanatic believer with words. He could only rely on some special means or find the weakness in her heart. Fortunately, Lan Si had a weakness in front of Gu Nan. Look after her and don't let her commit suicide. Gu Nan tossed the young girl to 3 last and walked towards Lin Yunyun. Strictly speaking, the current Lin Yunyun was no longer of much use to Gu Nan. The god's stone fragment hidden in her body had been removed, and there was no longer anything that could hinder her evolution. However, she had nothing to do with Gu Nan anymore. In gaming terms, the chain of quests for the NPC Lin Yunyun had already been completed by Gu Nan. Now, Gu Nan would still pay attention to her, but it was just a habit. After losing the god's stone fragment, Lin Yunyun's evolution speed was very fast. In a very short time, her inner breath had been completely restrained, which in turn promoted the evolution of her divine soul. After a moment, she slowly opened her eyes. They were no longer as beastly as before. Instead, they were as clear as before. "Uncle?" The first thing she saw was Gu Nan's calm face. Lin Yunyun felt as if she had just had a dream, a very, very long dream. She could barely remember the scenes in the dream, but there was one scene that was unusually clear. A ray of green light floated out from his body and was about to approach the other ball of green light before being completely engulfed by it. She could clearly feel that the green light was still controlling her body at that time. If the green light was devoured, then she would probably be controlled by someone else for the rest of her life. However, at that moment, the green light was grabbed by a hand, and the connection between it and her was instantly cut off. "Uncle, what exactly is this?" Lin Yunyun hugged her knees and sat beside Gu Nan while watching him play with the green fragment in his hand. The fragment looked ordinary, just like the broken glass that could be seen everywhere on the street. However, such an item had caused her to suffer for many years, and she couldn't even advance in strength. "It's something that can be eaten. There should be a total of 3 such fragments. One is with you, one is with Lan Si, and the last one has to come out on its own," Gu Nan explained casually. With a peculiar expression, Third Last said, "Lord, I think I've seen this thing before." Indeed, Third Last had seen something similar before. Even though it looked different, the extremely special and majestic aura it exuded was something that she could never forget. "It's actually in Qin Xuanji's hands?" After hearing Third Last's answer, Gu Nan suddenly felt helpless. If he had known this would happen, he would have snatched it from Qin Xuanji. That way, he wouldn't have to deliberately let Feng Luan go and lure the last fragment out. Seeing Gu Nan's expression, Third Last said solemnly, "Lord, please don't underestimate Qin Xuanji and the bloodline alliance behind her. There are world breakers among them." "What's the bloodline alliance?" Gu Nan asked with raised eyebrows. He wasn't too afraid of the so-called world breakers, but he was more or less curious about those who might correspond to level 4 abilities. The power system in this world was essentially similar to that in the game. Hence, according to the model of the game, world breakers should have already dug deep into the core skills and derived their own exclusive rules and skills. Yes, unlike buying skills at level 3, what players had to do from level 4 onwards was far from ordinary online games. Level 4 actually required players to build their own skills. One could choose to build the simplest skills to quickly break through to level 5, but that would inevitably lower the upper limit of one's power in the future. One could also choose the most complicated skills, but that would inevitably slow down one's leveling speed. There were even some skills that players couldn't understand at all. It was just asking for trouble. If one had a good grasp of these things, that would be the most important thing. In comparison, the natives here had an advantage in this aspect. They could spend decades researching and building rules, but the players didn't have that kind of time. Gu Nan recalled the overview of Level 4 in his mind, and Third Last was also talking about the situation of the Bloodline Alliance. The Bloodline is a very large group. Our headquarters is in the Central Star area, and the Sixth Star area has been the main development area of the Alliance for the past 200 years. Third Last tried to use simple words to let Gu Nan understand what kind of existence the Bloodline Alliance was. Their origin, background, and the area they could influence. The simplest way to describe them was that they were huge. In the entire Bloodline Alliance, there were at least 3 world breakers, and at any time, one of them would be in the Central Star area headquarters. In the Sixth Star area, which was an important target, its power was also very large. There were close to 10 elites at the level of Wei Donghai. What surprised Gu Nan the most was that Third Last had received orders from the higher-ups to contact Qin Xuanji to monitor the White Mist organization. However, it turned out that the organization was also a member of the Bloodline Alliance. Now, he remembered that Lan Marigold had said that she had helped him contact a Bloodline reincarnation organization. So, why are you following me? Gu Nan finally asked this question. He didn't really care about it, but he wanted to know the answer. Chapter 93. There would definitely be factional strife within any large organization, as well as endless internal friction. There would also be situations where members disliked each other and were even hostile to each other. There were also various organizations in the Bloodline Alliance, but there was no enmity between them. On the contrary, they shared the same origin, which allowed them to exchange resources better. Instead, there was a conflict that stemmed from the bloodline that directly divided all the bloodlines into 2 camps. The conflict was very simple, and that was the difference between natural bloodlines and inherited bloodlines. For example, Three Tails and Lin Yunyun were born as bloodlines, but their bloodlines had not manifested before, so they looked just like ordinary people. As long as their abilities progressed to a certain level, or through special catalysis, they would be able to awaken their bloodlines. However, there was also another type of bloodline who were just ordinary humans in the beginning. They inherited the ancient bloodline into their bodies through some means and thus became bloodlines. Take Qin Xuanji for example. She was originally just an ordinary person in the Langyu world, and she only managed to snatch the inheritance of the bloodline from a group of people after a series of cruel battles. The 2 types of people looked down on each other. One side felt that the other was a bastard, while the other side felt that the other was just a sheep that could not withstand the test of blood. Three Tails was an extreme supporter of the bloodline. Ever since the old master left, there have been more and more bastards in the organization. This time, they would rather give such an important mission to Qin Xuanji and let her come all the way from the Sixth Star domain. She gritted her teeth and said fiercely, "So that's the trigger." Gu Nan nodded and said, "In that case, the White Mist is an organization of bloodline innate organizations?" "That's right. The 2 commanders of the White Mist are almost pure-blooded blood descendants. Besides, they maintain the ancient tradition of only recruiting bloodline innate humans and humans. The bloodline innate humans looked down on bastards, but they did not have much prejudice against humans. After all, there were many powerhouses among humans, and they could even be considered the true rulers of the universe. It was just like how the orcs despised the half-beastmen, but they treated humans as equals. After figuring out Three Last's motive, Gu Nan didn't say anything else and simply asked her to guide Lin Yunyun to quickly familiarize herself with her power. With Gu Nan's current strength and status, he indeed needed some people to order around. He couldn't do everything himself. In a hidden cave, Qin Xuanji drew a mysterious magic circle. Then, she used a knife to cut her arm. Blood immediately flowed out and dripped onto the ground. The blood continued to drip down and flowed into the formation along the veined patterns. The formation gradually emitted a faint glow. After a while, the blood had completely turned light blue, and a figure began to appear on the spell formation. This figure was wrapped in armor and held a giant flail in his right hand. He looked extremely terrifying. Qin Xuanji, you know the price of interstellar communication. I hope you bring good news. The armored figure spoke slowly. His voice was extremely strange, as if it was hidden inside the armor. However, it seemed to be able to reach the bottom of one's heart without leaking out at all. Just this ability alone was equivalent to a permanent sound transmission technique. The power of this armored figure had already reached a shocking level. Qin Xuanji knelt on one knee and maintained a calm expression, but there was also a hint of respect. Yes, Your Excellency, the King of the Deep Sea. I've found the whereabouts of the water barrier stone, but there are others who have their eyes on it too, she said in her usual deep voice. Feng Luan's actions during this period of time couldn't be hidden from others. Besides, he had never thought of hiding the Godstone, so it wouldn't be difficult for Qin Xuanji to find him. Feng Zhuotong was not difficult to deal with, but Qin Xuanji had also seen Feng Luan's experience in the past few days. The siblings, Lan Ta and Lan Si, followed Feng Luan, but after entering the laboratory, only Feng Luan escaped in a panic. This made Qin Xuanji uncertain. She knew who the owner of the laboratory was as soon as she checked. It was Gu Nan again. Qin Xuanji had no confidence in dealing with a freak like Gu Nan, so she bypassed the people in the Deep Sea bloodline and went directly to the King of the Deep Sea. The King of the Deep Sea was one of the world breakers among the blood descendants and the true master of the Deep Sea bloodline. The armored man, the King of the Deep Sea, laughed when he heard this. Good. Immediately start to snatch the water barrier stone. If anyone dares to interfere, kill them. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Xuanji saw the shoulder of the King of the Deep Sea light up, and a badge slowly fell into her hand. It was the epaulet of the King of the Deep Sea. Qin Xuanji couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. Thank you, Your Excellency. She had an extraordinary understanding of the power of the world breakers. Although the world breakers were in the central system, it was not difficult for them to descend their power here. Even the best among the transcendents like Wei Donghai had the power to cross the system to attack, let alone the world breakers. The word world breakers meant that they had the power to break the astral world and even go outside the astral world. Feng Luan was in a bad mood for the past 2 days. Even if the round stone in front of his chest was getting stronger and stronger, and it helped him more and more, it couldn't alleviate his anxiety. Lan Ta was killed by Gu Nan almost immediately, and the green light on the girl was about to fall into his hands, but it was blocked by Gu Nan. This kind of experience was not something that made people happy. Why is it always that guy? Young Master Feng kept roaring in his heart, but his anger didn't go to his head. He knew that he was in danger. The opponent had killed Lan Ta, but he let him go. Who would believe that it wasn't a conspiracy? Young Master Feng was just a playboy, but he wasn't an idiot. Feng Luan felt as if there was a giant net that was shrinking in a place he couldn't see. It was waiting for all the prey to be in position. Then, it would close and suffocate him. No. I have to find Dad. I have to leave this damn place. Young Master Feng hesitated for a long time before he made up his mind. He had to get out of there. He believed returning to the sixth system was the only way he could escape Gu Nan's clutches. Young Master, the Mister has something to ask of you. A servant's voice came from the door. Feng Luan didn't think too much about it. He was going to find his father anyway, so he said, Wait. I'm coming. However, the moment he opened the door, he felt a chill in his heart. In his house, the servants always called his father Mr. Why had they changed it today? While he was hesitating, he felt a power come from in front of him. 2 black-clothed men were standing in the doorway. They pushed the door open. Feng Luan quickly took 2 steps back and shouted, Who are you? Chapter 94. Deep into the night, Feng Luan was frantically fleeing through the streets and alleys. There was a wound on the right side of his face, and blood was slowly dripping down his cheek. He looked abnormally disheveled, completely unlike the usual young Master Feng. Damn it! Damn it! Feng Luan cursed fiercely. He raised his hand to wipe the blood off his face, but accidentally touched the wound, causing him to grimace in pain. Those two fellows! Fortunately, I'm not the same as before. Otherwise, I would have been in danger today. Feng Luan confirmed that there was no danger around him, so he simply ran to the side and sat down. He exhaled heavily. Those two black-clothed men were at least innate level 6. If he had been the same as before, he would have been knocked down in a single encounter. Fortunately, the round stone had increased his strength, and he had learned a few secret techniques. That was how he had managed to escape with his life. I have to find my father as soon as possible. Feng Luan immediately made a decision after catching his breath. He had long since used the item that Feng Zhuotang had given him to ask for help, but he had not received any response. At that time, Feng Luan knew that something had probably happened to his father. Who the hell are you? Feng Zhuotang's face was gloomy. His heart sank as he looked at the black-clothed men surrounding him. He did not know what kind of enemies he had in the 66 Amaterasu that would be enough to send out such a lineup. There were already 3 extraordinaires, 1 Eternal Domain Realm and 2 Nuance Realm experts. Such a combination was enough to wipe out some medium-sized forces. Lord Feng, do you still not understand? Qin Xuanji slowly walked out from the side and said coldly, Your son took something he shouldn't have. It's you. Feng Zhuotang stared at her coldly. I knew that you approached Feng Luan with no good intentions. Although the truth was that Feng Luan was pestering her, Qin Xuanji did not bother to explain anything. She said to the person beside her, Mr. Yu, sorry to trouble you. It's a small matter. The Eternal Domain Realm Extraordinaire, the black-clothed man who had been silent all along, said indifferently. The indifference in his tone made Feng Zhuotang's heart flash with a trace of anger. Even in such a situation, were they so sure that he had no way to fight back? However, in the next moment, he understood why she was so certain. Mr. Yu slowly took a step forward, and the black cloak on his head naturally slid down, revealing the face of a young man with a silver mask on his face. Others might not feel much about this image, but Feng Zhuotang felt his scalp go numb. You are Yu Qianling? Mr. Yu paused and smiled. I didn't expect someone to remember my name even though I haven't been in the world for 20 years. Feng Zhuotang's heart turned cold, not only because of the identity of the person in front of him, but also because of the power he represented. Yu Qianling was a very famous Heng area elite in the 6th system. He was a super genius of the Blood People Alliance. Back in the day, he was said to be one of the people most likely to break the world. However, after the great battle 20 years ago, there was no news of him. Even Feng Zhuotang thought he was dead. But he never thought that he would appear in the 9th star region and help Qin Xuanji fight against him. Even 20 years ago, Yu Qianling was strong enough to suppress him. Now, he was not a break-world god, but he was at least a pathmaster. Feng Zhuotang did not have time to think. He chose to strike first instead of running away. He knew he was a swordsman. The path of a swordsman was the path of attack. If he used a knife to break the situation, he might be able to live. Running away was a dead end. Yu Qianling's lips lifted. He raised his hand and blocked the tip of Feng Zhuotang's knife. When the knife light came down, the scene in Feng Zhuotang's eyes suddenly changed. It was like a bright moon was hanging in the sky, and everything in the world was reflected in it. In the next moment, the same knife light came out of Yu Qianling's hand. It slashed Feng Zhuotang's forehead. He flew away and landed on the ground. Moon of time, reflect the world. Yu Qianling's voice sounded coldly. He looked at his opponent on the ground and said, You cannot understand my rules. You will lose. Feng Zhuotang was not completely dead. He tried to get up, but he failed a few times. It really is the power of a path master, Dad. An exclamation came from the side. It was Feng Luan. He had arrived just in time to see Feng Zhuotong get hit by the knife and fall to the ground. Feng Zhuotong, who looked like he was on the verge of death, suddenly got up and rushed to Feng Luan's side. He grabbed his shoulder and started running. "Go!" Feng Zhuotong shouted. Feng Luan did not even have time to react before he was carried away by his father. Feng Zhuotong's speed was much faster than before. Clearly, he had used some kind of secret technique. Perhaps he wanted to take this opportunity to escape or at least send his son away. But in the next moment, a figure blocked his way. This person was dressed in a white robe. He was holding a black longsword in his hand. However, Feng Zhuotong was pleasantly surprised. "Mr. Gu, please help me." Feng Zhuotong looked like he had seen a life-saving straw. He hurriedly said, "As long as you keep my son alive, a sword light flashed." Feng Luan, who was standing behind Feng Zhuotong, only felt his vision blur. The black tip of the sword had already pierced through his father's throat, through his spine, and out of his body. Feng Zhuotong looked at Gu Nan in a daze, as if he could not believe that Gu Nan had acted so decisively. Gu Nan casually tossed this eternal domain expert's corpse to the side, revealing young Master Feng Luan behind him. Feng Luan looked at the expressionless Gu Nan. The cold aura behind him was also closing in. At the critical moment of life and death, he actually made the right choice. He pulled the blue round stone from his chest and threw it to the side. Then, he ran in the opposite direction. This was indeed a smart move. Anyone present could easily kill him. However, if the God Stone was not in his hands, no one would be interested in him. Gu Nan instantly appeared beside the God Stone. At the same time, a ray of moonlight descended. The moonlight shone on Gu Nan's body. It was like some kind of extremely corrosive ray trying to drill into his body. Unfortunately, Gu Nan's strongest point was his body. The moonlight could not even penetrate his skin. It was forcefully blocked outside, and the God's Stone successfully fell into his hands. Yu Qianling frowned slightly. The threat that this new enemy brought to him seemed to be stronger than Feng Zhuotong's. Qin Xuanji also said beside him, "Mr. Yu, he is Gu Nan." Yu Qianling's gaze was still indifferent. No one could see his expression under the mask. Chapter 95. The main body of the God Stone was in his hands, but Gu Nan did not seem too excited. In his gaming career, he had received many good things. It was just a low-level God Stone, so it was not enough to move him. Yu Qianling's eyes froze. He was going to strike, but Qin Xuanji stopped him. "Mr. Yu, please wait." Qin Xuanji quietly said, "I am friends with him. If we can solve this peacefully, that would be great." Yu Qianling thought about it and nodded. The stronger a person was, the more they cared about their lives. They would not be like the thugs on the street, who would fight over a disagreement. Plus, Yu Qianling was only there to help. It was questionable whether or not he would fight. So, before the two of them fought, Qin Xuanji tried to make peace. "Gu Nan, the World Stone is a treasure, but it only works for Break World Elite. If you are willing to trade it, we will be able to satisfy you." Qin Xuanji's negotiation was very skillful. She pointed out that the World Stone was useless to Gu Nan. She also hinted that she had a Break World Elite backing her up. It was a shame that Gu Nan needed the God Stone for himself. He did not care about what she meant. To players, friends or enemies depended on the mission. If they got in the way of doing missions and leveling up, they were enemies. Therefore, in the next moment, Gu Nan's crimson saber suddenly appeared in his hand. With the support of shadow energy, he beheaded Qin Xuanji at an unimaginable speed and directly chopped off her head. The head was separated from the body. Qin Xuanji's face was still in shock. Gu Nan didn't even bother to look at the head that had flown out. He caught the headless corpse and took out Qin Xuanji's green crystal precisely. The core of the crystal was the last piece of the God Stone. The people of the Blood Man Alliance used a special method to seal it. Yu Qianling coldly laughed. Miss Qin, it looks like they do not want to be friends with you. Qin Xuanji's severed head had somehow floated to his side. There was a helpless expression on her face. Since that's the case, please make your move, mister. Gu Nan glanced in that direction. The life force of a bloodline carrier is truly vigorous. Of course, he could see that Qin Xuanji was relying purely on her astonishing vitality to maintain her will. If he returned her body to her, it wouldn't take long for it to heal itself. Just like himself, under the effect of the blood saber, half of his neck was broken, but it was already healing at a crazy speed. Cut the crap. Let me see what's so special about a 19-year-old eternal domain cultivator. Yu Qianling's eyes flashed with a strange light, but he had no intention of attacking immediately. He sensed danger from Gu Nan's previous attack. Gu Nan's gaze also swept across Yu Qianling. The feeling Shi Feng got from this person was similar to Wei Donghai's. He was a character who had comprehended the skill's profundity and was only one step away from reaching Tier 4. It was just that previously it was just Wei Donghai's clone. Now it was his main body. He didn't think too much about it. He raised his hand and slashed, as if he hadn't seen the previous battle. Yu Qianling sneered. Just like how he dealt with Feng Zhuotang just now, he raised one hand high. A faint light began to flicker in his palm, and an inexplicable concept appeared. Moon of time, reflection. The corner of Gu Nan's mouth curled up slightly. He suddenly put away the blood saber in his hand and punched with his left hand. Yu Qianling was slightly stunned. He subconsciously raised his hand to meet the attack. The terrifying force smashed into the moonlight. Gu Nan suffered the same amount of recoil, but he still stood firm. Yu Qianling, on the other hand, retreated 3 steps. Show me again? Gu Nan had a disdainful smile on his face. He was also very familiar with the nature of the power of the moon. Relying on its extremely high level, it could reflect most of the rules in the world. However, it wasn't without weaknesses. The most direct one was that it was helpless against pure violence. Gu Nan's fist did not carry any rules. It was just a strange force. At such a time, no matter how strong the power of the moon was, it was no different from a wall. Boom, 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 boom. Another 4 consecutive punches landed. Every single punch caused the ground beneath Yu Qianling's feet to explode. Clearly, the latter was trying to divert the force and was unwilling to bear Gu Nan's strange force. Although the power of the moon could reflect rules, it couldn't directly erase the force. After suffering a few punches, Yu Qianling finally realized that he couldn't continue fighting like this. He leaped backward abruptly, distancing himself from Gu Nan. He formed a mysterious seal with both hands and pushed it forward gently. A new moon attacked Gu Nan. However, Gu Nan didn't even have the intention to dodge. He allowed the new moon to slash his body, leaving a bloody wound. However, a short 3 seconds later, the wound began to recover rapidly. It couldn't stop Gu Nan at all. The corner of Yu Qianling's mouth twitched. He hesitated for a moment. Gu Nan's arrogant actions made him a little annoyed. However, rationality won out in the end. He had no feud with the other party. Why was there a need to fight to the death? The Alliance couldn't find trouble with him over such a matter. However, before he could finish his thoughts, a terrifying and majestic aura suddenly rose. Even Gu Nan was slightly shocked. However, this aura came too suddenly and inexplicably. It was almost at his back in an instant. He didn't even have time to turn around. From Yu Qianling's angle, he could see that Qin Xuanji had already stood up. She was pressing her head with one hand and holding an epaulet with the other. That's the aura of the king of the deep sea. Yu Qianling was knowledgeable after all. He recognized the technique of this big shot at a glance. The shadow of an armor appeared from the epaulet. A giant hand suddenly slapped down on Gu Nan. Unparalleled power and majestic rule aura. This was the combination of Gu Nan and Yu Qianling. The power of one palm made Yu Qianling feel invincible. Gu Nan's feeling was much simpler. It really is level 4 power. He knew that the other party had a backup plan, but he didn't expect it to come so quickly and so fiercely. At such a critical moment, he didn't have time to think. He could only put his hands behind his head and bend his body slightly. Shadow power crazily protected his back. Bang! The palm of the King of the Deep Sea's shadow slapped Gu Nan to the ground. Even the ground that was covered by the palm was pressed down by 2 meters. One could see how terrifying that palm was. Qin Xuanji slowly walked over and met up with Yu Qianling. The way the latter looked at her was different. He originally thought that she was just a normal member of the alliance. He didn't expect her to be bestowed by the King of the Deep Sea. People who could talk directly to a break-world bigshot were not easy to deal with. Moreover, Qin Xuanji had such a technique, but she wanted to attack first. She wanted to choose the best time to attack. She had to kill Gu Nan in one hit. Thinking about this, Yu Qianling couldn't help but sigh. This Gu Nan didn't die in vain. Chapter 96. Hearing Qin Xuanji's voice, Yu Qianling looked at the sunken ground in shock. From what he could sense, there were no longer any signs of life in this deep pit. How could anyone still be alive? However, he quickly understood what Qin Xuanji meant. There was no sign of Gu Nan in the area suppressed by the King of the Deep Sea's shadow. Did he run away after being hit by that palm, or was he not hit at all? This thought flashed across their minds. Yu Qianling was slightly better. He was just unwilling to fight to the death with Gu Nan, not afraid of him. Qin Xuanji, on the other hand, felt a strong sense of danger and turned to leave. The King of the Deep Sea's epaulette had completely disappeared after being used once. She did not want to be attacked by Gu Nan again. The next moment, a cold aura pierced through the night sky. Qin Xuanji stopped in her tracks and felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She looked down subconsciously, only to find that her abdomen had been completely pierced. That was where her life essence was. Her strength was starting to leak out. An indescribable fear surfaced in her heart. Yu Qianling appeared by her side immediately. The silver moonlight instantly filled the surroundings, but there was no trace of Gu Nan. Under the night sky, in an ordinary residential area, there were no pedestrians on the road. Occasionally, a hover car drove by, causing a few dogs to bark. A father and daughter walked into the residential area and took the elevator up to the 22nd floor. For a residential area with 50 to 60 floors, this floor was considered very expensive. "Daddy, I'm so hungry. I want to eat dumplings." The little girl stood at the door of her house and began to mumble. "All right, Daddy will cook dumplings for you later." The father patted her head lovingly and took out his keys to open the door. He entered the door and turned on the lights as usual. He did not sense anything amiss. Only when the lights came on did he suddenly realize that a person covered in blood was sitting on the sofa in his house. His head was lowered, and his spine seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. There was an obvious dent in it. His back was covered in blood, staining his white robe bright red. The blood was even seeping to the front of his body. One of his arms was completely broken. His elbow joints were broken, and his forearm was folded in front of his body. It was a sight that made people's hair stand on end. The strangest thing was that this person's gaze was incomparably calm, as if the person who was so heavily injured wasn't him. His appearance was too terrifying. Not only did the little girl scream in fright, but even her father took 2 steps back and hurriedly shielded his daughter behind him. Who are you?" he asked, suppressing the fear in his heart. The strange man didn't say a word and just stared straight ahead. He didn't even breathe. Only the sound of blood dripping indicated that everything before him wasn't an illusion. Was he already dead? Her father could not help but think this way. Instead, the little girl suddenly revealed an excited expression. "Daddy, he must be a peerless expert who is being hunted down, just like in the novels." As she spoke, she actually wanted to run to the front, but her father hurriedly stopped her. The strange man still did not react, not even his eyelids twitching. Seeing that this person didn't seem to be moving, or that he was already dead, her father mustered up his courage and said, "Hey, if you're still alive, make a sound." The reply he got was still silence. Just as he was getting impatient, a strange phenomenon appeared. Half of the man's neck was broken, and his spine was gradually recovering. Even his damaged muscles and skin were slowly recovering. Her father suddenly felt his hands and feet turn cold. Not only was this person alive, but his injuries were also automatically recovering. "Go. Come with Daddy." He picked up his daughter and quickly ran towards the door. He had made up his mind to immediately call the police after leaving the house. It was better to leave such a terrifying person to the police. The next moment, a shadow flashed across the ground. This father's entire body was cut in half at the waist, and his upper body slowly slid down. The little girl screamed again, but this time she was sobbing, and her voice was also filled with fear. The neck of the person in white on the sofa gradually returned to normal. He then stood up and moved his limbs. One of his hands was still broken, and when he moved, it was like a prosthetic limb, dangling from his shoulder. This person was, of course, Gunan. "He's really badly injured," he muttered, somewhat speechless. "His luck is too bad, and he just happened to meet a level 4 physical strength type." His demon god body was not afraid of most attacks at the level of rules, but when faced with pure strength, he could only take it head-on. The attack from the Deep Sea King's shadow had almost destroyed all of Gunan's vitality. Fortunately, passivation reduced most of the damage, giving him a chance to escape. But even in that state, he still turned around and gave Qin Xuanji a fatal blow. Bloodline carrier, so that's what it is. Thinking of the scene when he pierced through Qin Xuanji's abdomen, Gunan could not help but smile coldly. Previously, Qin Xuanji's terrifying vitality had indeed surprised him. That kind of physique was almost comparable to his demon god body. But under the observer's eyepiece, he still noticed some clues. Unlike his demon god body, physique was strengthened in every part of the body. There was a core in the body of a bloodline carrier, and their vitality was emitted from there. Once this core was destroyed, the bloodline carrier would lose the source of power, which was the foundation of their bloodline power. Piercing through Qin Xuanji's bloodline core was enough to make her lose the ability to fight for a long time, and naturally, she would not be able to organize people to chase after him. As expected of level 4 strength, even the effect of Dawn's praise is suppressed. Gunan looked at the injuries on his body that were slowly recovering, and could not help but frown. The attack from the Deep Sea King had not only caused him terrifying injuries, but the remaining rule power was also suppressing his self-recovery ability. The injuries that could have been healed in a few days would now need at least a month, and it also depended on how fast the level 4 rule power dissipated. But if I can absorb the power of the God Stone and increase my sin value to more than 300, the suppression effect of the level 4 power will be greatly reduced. Gunan had a very thorough understanding of the rules of the game. In the Evil God game, there was a situation of level suppression, which was reflected by one's rank. As long as his core skill reached the level of esoteric, the level suppression would not be as severe. I'll wait for another 2 days, and when my strength has recovered to level 3, I'll go and find Lan Si. Gunan gently clenched his fists, feeling the power in his body, and made up his mind. His current strength was probably not even comparable to an ordinary level 3. If Lan Si resisted, the outcome would be hard to say. Moreover, if he appeared with this appearance, it was unknown whether Three Tails would still be loyal. Gunan had never trusted any of these NPCs. Chapter 97. Just as Gunan was temporarily dormant and recuperating from his injuries, his disappearance caused many people and many things to change in the 66 Amaterasu. In a single night, the news of Star's ranker Feng Zhuotang's death and Gunan's disappearance had spread throughout the entire 66 Amaterasu. Even in the endless sea of stars, these two were considered experts. For something like this to happen to them on the same day, it was truly thought-provoking. Madame Lu 7, who came from the 6-star region, immediately issued an order to search for the whereabouts of Feng Zhuotang's orphan, Feng Lun. As for the local Lu's family's Lu Yiming, he didn't express any opinion on Gu Nan's disappearance. Within the Lu's family, Lu Xinyu had a vexed expression as she walked out of Lu Yiming's room. She had requested for a large number of manpower from her grandfather to search for Gu Nan's whereabouts, but Lu Yiming had rejected it. The true ruler of the Lu's family didn't even give a reasonable reason and merely asked Lu Xinyu to calm down. "Sister, calm down," Land Marigold advised her. "For a person like Gu Nan, as long as we haven't seen his corpse, there is no need to be anxious." Bai Wu and the others had also heard of the news of Gu Nan's disappearance, and they had even more detailed information. The alliance made a move. Elder Qin said with a solemn expression, "Lord Yu Qianling personally made a move, and Feng Zhuotang had no chance of survival. Gu Nan, perhaps he escaped with severe injuries." Li Leyo said, "If he died in the hands of Lord Yu, there is no reason not to leave his corpse." Wei Rou sneered, "The problem now isn't whether Gu Nan is dead or not, but why did Lord Yu make a move against him?" Once this statement was out, Li Leyo fell into silence. Even Elder Qin's expression didn't look good. Wei Rou's words were right on point. He and the others had come all the way here to find someone to support the organization, not a troublesome fellow. Moreover, the problems on his body might affect the alliance, so they had to be careful. "I've already sent the news back to the organization and let the two commanders make the decision," Elder Qin said. "Investigate clearly why Lord Yu attacked first." It had to be said that Elder Qin still had a sliver of hope in his heart. He hoped that this was just Yu Qianling's personal behavior. He had seen Gu Nan's power and knew that once the latter entered the organization, he would be second only to the two commanders. Wouldn't such a big shot need to have a few confidants in the organization? As the first person to come into contact with the other party, Elder Qin had long set his sights on that spot. But now, at that moment, a crystal on Elder Qin's body suddenly lit up. He jumped into the air and a phantom image appeared. The shadow was wearing a mask and had a slender figure. There was also a silver-colored sword at her waist. "Greetings, Second Commander." Elder Qin and the other two greeted at the same time. The shadow nodded lightly, then said in a cold female voice, "Immediately stop all cooperation with Gu Nan and return to the organization." Upon hearing this, Elder Qin frowned slightly while Wei Rou was overjoyed. "Second Commander." Elder Qin tried to speak, but before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted. "A real big shot in the alliance has made a move. This matter is not something we can interfere with. Return immediately," the second commander said quickly. After saying that, the shadow dissipated and did not give Elder Qin a chance to continue asking questions. And he really had nothing to ask now, he just muttered, "The real big shots." A moment later, Elder Qin sighed softly and said, "Wei Rou, contact Third Last and ask her to bring people over immediately. We'll only wait for her for an hour." In Gu Nan's residence, Lin Yunyun was sitting in front of Third Last with a hesitant expression on her face. Third Last was still trying to persuade her. "Yunyun, he hasn't appeared for a few days. No one knows if he's dead or alive now. Follow me, let's go to the White Mist. That's where we blood descendants should go," Third Last said. Lin Yunyun simply lowered her head and remained silent. She knew that Third Last was telling the truth. If she wanted to develop further, she would have to join the blood descendant. However, do you think that you can't be ungrateful because Gu Nan helped you awaken your bloodline? Third Last sneered after seeing through her thoughts. Lin Yunyun hesitated for a while before nodding gently. "Idiot! What can you do to help him here? If someone can't even deal with him, you'll just be a burden if you stay." She paused for a while before continuing, You can only make good use of your power in the white mist and find a chance to take revenge for Gu Nan in the future. Even though she said those words, she still didn't believe herself. Yu Qianling was the one who did it. No matter how talented Lin Yunyun was, how long would it take for her to reach that stage? By then, it was unknown if she would still remember Gu Nan. She had done everything she could to kidnap Lin Yunyun because she wanted to find a helper for herself. By the time they reached the white mist, Lin Yunyun would have no one to rely on but herself. That would mean that her power would double, and many things would become easier. Lin Yunyun fell into deep thought again, and this time, she seemed to be in a dilemma. At this moment, Third Last's communication device lit up. Her expression changed slightly. The people from the white mist are about to leave 66 Amaterasu. It'll be too late if we wait any longer. Have you thought it through? With a choice in front of her, Lin Yunyun finally gritted her teeth and said, "Okay, I'll go with you." A few moments later, the two figures quickly left Gu Nan's residence, as if they were afraid that someone would suddenly return. However, a shadow had already stopped on the sofa in the house where they couldn't see. It then turned into Gu Nan, who watched them leave through the window. A faint smile flashed across his face before he stopped smiling and lifted the sofa, revealing a small door on the ground. After opening the door, Lan Si's face was revealed. "Seems like you're seriously injured." Lan Si sneered at Gu Nan. "How does it feel to be betrayed by your loved ones? People like you who only know about conspiracies and power will never be treated sincerely by others." Gu Nan smiled and said, "You're talking about the way people get along with each other, but it doesn't apply to me." Lan Si could not help but be slightly stunned. Before she could react to what Gu Nan was saying, she saw that he had already taken out a blue round stone and placed it in front of her. It was the purpose of her and her brother's trip, which was to obtain the divine clear water stone for Goddess Nuwa. At this moment, 2 of the 3 holes on the divine clear water stone had already been filled, and the last one was on her. Lan Si suddenly felt cold sweat trickling down her back. She had no idea what Gu Nan was going to do, but she knew that it wouldn't be anything good. "Are you ready? I'm the first oracle in this world." Gu Nan reached out and patted her face, while the power of shadow surged out and suppressed Lan Si's divine power. Chapter 98. In the early days of the game, when the players were still inexperienced, there had always been different opinions on how to use parangons. Some people wanted to swallow it directly, some wanted to use it to nurture their own god, and some wanted to use the god stone as bait, until a method to directly convert the god stone into sin points appeared. From then on, no one tried to stir up any more trouble. They would only praise him from the perspective of the latecomer, "Your AF** King Genius." It turned out that no matter how messy the gameplay was, it was still not as direct as the sin point. The divine stone slowly approached Lan Si. The green light was getting brighter and brighter, and the same light began to flash between Lan Si's eyebrows. That was the fragment of the divine stone that belonged to her. The god stone under Gu Nan's control was much more powerful than Feng Luan's. In just a moment, Lan Si did not have the strength to resist at all. The fragment in her body had already completely separated and fused with the divine stone. Finally, the complete god stone seemed to have completely awakened at this moment. Under the faint light, mysterious patterns began to appear, instantly covering the surface. The god stone was blue and white in color, exuding an astonishing divine radiance. In front of the incomparably lofty power of the same origin, Lan Si almost gave birth to the idea of prostrating himself in worship. However, in the next moment, a smear of black began to appear on the god stone and rapidly spread throughout the entire god stone. The divine stone's originally supreme aura suddenly disappeared. Lan Si seemed to realize something and shouted, "Devil! You're the devil!" Lan Si had never seen a god stone before, but he knew that even a mutant god could not change the characteristics of a godhead. Unless the other party was not a god at all, only devils could do such a thing. they were basically tarnishing the godhood. Gu Nan was non-committal. In the background of the game, very few people knew about the existence of the evil god. Even among the gods, there were a lot of people who were confused, let alone Lan Si, an oracle. However, what Gu Nan was doing now was indeed tarnishing a godhead, so it was no wonder that Lan Si would mistake it. The evil god was an existence opposed to the gods, and it was Gu Nan's instinct to defile the divine spark. He easily left his mark on the divine spark and then pushed it back. That jet-black godhead once again appeared in front of Lan Si, startling the latter. "Can you feel it? This is power," Gu Nan said in a strange tone, "what you desire, what you're unwilling to accept, and what you've lost. Pick it up, and you'll be able to grasp everything." Gu Nan's voice seemed to have some kind of magical power. Lan Si began to unconsciously look at the god's stone. What appeared in her mind was the scene of the god's stone recognizing Feng Luan and her brother's determination to help him. She couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept that after serving the mother goddess for 20 years, she would end up as someone's slave, and that person was just lucky. Power. I want power. The god's stone and Lan Si were getting closer and closer until it completely fused into the space between her eyebrows. Gu Nan still had a faint smile on his face. He had never worried that Lan Si would not fall. Not to mention that there were loopholes in her faith. Even if she was a fanatic, he had a way to make her fall. The main point was that no one could resist the temptation of power. This was especially true for God's emissaries. The power of the Godhead was originally from the same source as them. As long as they accepted the God's stone, they would have the foundation to become a god. The stronger the God's emissaries' worship of the God's power, the more likely it was that they would fall. Unfortunately, this power had been infected by the evil god. When the God's emissary woke up again, it would be too late. After an unknown amount of time, Lan Si opened her eyes again. She didn't care that Gu Nan was still standing in front of her. She reached out a hand with some joy, and there was a blue light shining on it. This was a different divine power from the god of flowers. It came from this godstone, and it belonged to Lan Si, and it also belonged to someone else. Gu Nan's thoughts moved slightly, and Lan Si felt that the circulation of divine power in her body suddenly stopped. The Godhead in her mind no longer swallowed any divine power. "You!" Lan Si immediately realized that it was Gu Nan's action. She glared at Gu Nan, but all she got in return was a cold look. "You can't turn back anymore," Gu Nan said calmly. "Either you take this power and become my apostle, or you go back to Lorenza's god's kingdom and be burned as a heretic." Lan Si lowered her head in a daze. Looking at her hands that were filled with strange power, she almost wanted to cry. "Mother Goddess above, I couldn't resist the temptation." Gu Nan's figure was already far away, leaving her alone in the room. Gu Nan sat in the living room, waiting for the good news. He believed that Lan Si would not let him down. His eyes stopped on the sin value. The number had jumped from 130 to 176. This was the credit of Lan Si's fusion with the Godhead. It was very simple for players to convert God stones into sin value. According to the principle of blasphemy is sin, players only needed to find a way to let a person who didn't believe in the gods absorb and convert the Godhead. This process would provide sin value. Of course, players had to infect this Godhead before they could be recognized by the rules. The next moment, the number of sin value jumped again, reaching 196 points. Then, it began to rise slowly. 200, 210, 220. It was not until 252 points that Gu Nan's sin value stopped rising, but it was enough to surprise him. The increase of 122 points was almost the total amount of sin value he had obtained before. After all, this was something for a grade 5 player. Even if it was the lowest grade of Godstone, the income was enough to make Gu Nan rich overnight. Moreover, Gu Nan knew that this was far from the limit. It could only be said that Lan Si could only accept this much divine power. As her power grew, the godhead of blasphemy would become more complete, and it would continue to provide sin value. What a pity! If I'm able to attain 300 points and awaken the profundity of shadow energy. Gu Nan sighed with dissatisfaction. Not only would my injuries recover swiftly, my strength would be able to improve by leaps and bounds. 300 points of sin value would be equivalent to the level of Wei Donghai and Yu Qianling. With Gu Nan's means, once he reached that level, he would naturally be invincible in the same level. Even if he encountered a grade 4 god, he would not be completely helpless. Just as Gu Nan was thinking about how to help Lan Si increase her strength, Lan Si had already walked out of the room. At this moment, her appearance was very different from before. Her blue hair had become pitch black, and even her pupils had become black with a hint of purple. Although her appearance had not changed, her entire temperament was demonic and had a different kind of charm. She looked at Gu Nan sitting quietly at the side and slowly walked up. She bit her lips and said, "Lan Si greets my lord." Gu Nan smiled silently. Just as he was about to speak, a message suddenly came from the evil god's temple in his mind. Sin event. Lan Si's fall has been completed. Total obtained sin value, 50 points. Chapter 99. When he saw the first message, Gu Nan was pleasantly surprised, as if he had forgotten about this. When he saw the second message, he was dumbfounded. Crime events only rewarded sin points. This was the game's rule. Wait, wasn't this a special reward for a chain event? Chain events were extremely rare. Even in his previous life, Gu Nan had only encountered it a few times. Most of them ended after 2 or 3 rounds, and the rewards were just SOSO. At least, Gu Nan had never seen a special reward after completing a mission. In the past, he only used it as a special benefit. He didn't expect that this chain event would give him 1,600 points. For a grade 3 player, this wasn't a big number. Even when Gu Nan slacked off to complete the Immortal and Demon World mission, he still got 1,000 points. 1,600 points weren't enough at all. But in any case, these points came at the right time. Gu Nan didn't even bother to pay attention to Lan Si. His consciousness sank into the evil god's temple and began a wave of upgrades and purchases. Upgrading the core skill, Shadow Power, to level 3 cost 500 points. Upgrading Passivation to level 3 cost 400 points. Purchasing Flash Strike and Judgment of Justice cost another 600 points. After such a wave of purchases, Gu Nan's original 1,700 points were instantly reduced to 200 points. Fortunately, the skills were automatically unlocked. Otherwise, he wouldn't have enough money to purchase the skills. But these points were definitely worth it. The Shadow Power at the level of Profound already had the overbearing power of the Law of Light. And the level 3 Passivation skill reduced the damage by a terrifying 80%. If Gu Nan took another attack from the Deep Sea King, he wouldn't end up like this again. As for the 2 skills, Flash Strike and Judgment of Justice, they were the skills that Gu Nan was prepared to choose. Flash Strike. As far as the eye can see, you can jump to the back of the target and attack. Judgment of Justice. In the name of justice, deal true damage based on the life lost to the target. Flash Strike was the ultimate guarantee of the evil god's activity. It could be used to bypass all obstacles and was equivalent to a specific teleportation skill. Unless the space was sealed, no one could catch Gu Nan. Judgment of Justice belonged to the Kill series. This was a rather vulgar name and a skill that did not match the name of the evil god at all, but its effects were surprisingly good. The true damage beheading effect meant that no matter how powerful the boss was, once it entered a critical state, it could be killed by Gu Nan in one strike. Although the players in the game were evil gods, they had nothing to do with the light and dark attribute. Many of their equipment and skills were of the Holy Light series, such as Gu Nan's Dawn Sage Robe. Justice judgment, the skill that was nicknamed the Great Sword, was the same. In the eyes of the game officials, an evil god's righteous declaration of justice was no less effective than a wanton massacre. When Gu Nan returned to reality, he could clearly feel that his body had been strengthened once again. His original injuries were also rapidly recovering, and the suppression of the Deep-Sea King's nomological laws had weakened significantly. But in Lan Si's eyes, Gu Nan merely closed and opened his eyes, and his entire person's temperament changed greatly. Gu Nan, who had already given her a lot of pressure, seemed to have become even more unfathomable. "Sir," Lan Si called softly. She was still not used to seeing Gu Nan as a father god. In reality, the relationship between the evil god's oracles was also different from that of a normal god. Gu Nan felt the power in his body still slowly increasing, and the corner of his mouth began to curve into a faint smile. "Quickly master your power, this time follow me first." "Ah? Where are we going?" "To get back at them." Most players were vengeful, especially when an NPC caused a bad gaming experience. It was normal for them to wait until they could free up their hands to kill the other party's entire family. And even among the players, Gu Nan was the type who held a high grudge. The people from the White Mist could not catch up to them for the time being. Moreover, their organization was there, so the monk could run, but the temple could not. Therefore, his first target was the Bloodline Alliance. Ever since Yu Qianling appeared, his general whereabouts were no longer a mystery. After all, a person living in the world would have to stay somewhere, unless he lived alone in the deep mountains. Yu Qianling had already stayed in 66 Amaterasu for a long time. Interestingly, he was actually not in the gathering place of the Bloodline Alliance, but in a school. Starry School in the capital district of 66 Amaterasu was the name of the school that Yu Qianling was in. This former genius of the Bloodline Alliance, who was now a top expert, had actually disguised himself as an ordinary teacher and taught in this Starry School. Moreover, no one had found out for many years. If he had not been entrusted to act this time, no one would have found out. Today happened to be in the afternoon, the time when Starry School was bleeding. Students continuously walked out of the school. "Hey, I heard that someone came to visit Mr. Yu during your classes today?" "Yes. Many people have come to see Mr. Yu these few days. All of them seem very powerful, but they are very polite to Mr. Yu. My dad said that your Mr. Yu is also a powerful person." Such conversations occurred among many students. Yu Qianling's identity was constantly being spread. Although no one had a clear understanding of him, the fact that he was a very powerful person had already been proven. Yu Qianling listened to the discussions of his colleagues and opened the door of the teacher's dormitory indifferently. He walked in slowly, but he was muttering softly. "How troublesome. Seems like this identity has to be changed again. I've used it for so many years, I really can't bear to part with it." Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly could not continue. This was because he saw a person who would definitely not appear in his room. Gu Nan was sitting quietly in front of him with Lan Si, looking at him expressionlessly. Yu Qianling looked at the other party in shock. He could not understand at all. This person had clearly taken a blow from the Deep-Sea King. His injuries would probably not be lighter than Qin Xuanji's. Why was he here? Moreover, why did he not notice him entering his room? Yu Qianling only felt a chill. He turned around and wanted to put some distance between them, but Gu Nan appeared beside him in an instant and punched him directly. Flash attack. Yu Qianling's eyes were slightly cold. He knew that his strongest move was useless against Gu Nan, so he simply waved his hand and used a moon slash. The other party's strength was definitely not as good as his, and he was also injured. Bang! The moon slash was directly destroyed by Gu Nan. The shadow force flickered and crushed the moon rule. Then, he punched Yu Qianling's abdomen. Yu Qianling only felt a sharp pain as he was sent flying. However, what shocked him the most was the huge and terrifying aura on Gu Nan's body. There was also the rule power on his fist. That's profound level power. Yu Qianling screamed in his heart. Was there really a person who could suddenly explode with power after taking a world-breaking strike? Regardless of whether he believed it or not, Gu Nan had already grabbed him and looked down at him. Chapter 100. In the teacher's dormitory, Gu Nan held Yu Qianling's hair with one hand and stared at him coldly. The next moment, a dazzling silver moonlight erupted. Yu Qianling's entire body turned into a crescent moon and escaped from Gu Nan's grasp. He stood at the side and sneered at him. "Junior, do you really think?" Bang! Gu Nan's figure suddenly appeared behind him and punched the back of his head. Yu Qianling staggered from the impact. That terrifying force caused his vision to darken. Gu Nan's subsequent punches and kicks made him even more miserable. He was a great master at the profound meaning stage, but now he was like a sandbag, being punched and kicked by Gu Nan. After suffering a few punches, Yu Qianling finally flew into a rage. With a roar, he transformed into a silver-white moon fox. As a bloodline carrier, almost all had such a transformation ability. After transforming into their bloodline, their strength would increase significantly. At least, Gu Nan could clearly feel that the power of the silver moon around him had increased. Yu Qianling covered his entire body with the power of the moon, gradually filling the entire dormitory. Lan Si, who was beside him, even found it difficult to move. This was a very smart move. He could tell that Gu Nan was relying on his powerful physical strength. In such an environment, the other party would not be able to get close to him quickly. If Gu Nan used nomological power, then his law reflection technique would come in handy. He was indeed someone who had dominated the universe 20 years ago. From a tactical point of view, he did not make any mistakes. Unfortunately, Gu Nan had just obtained 2 new skills. Flash Strike. Gu Nan's figure cut through the void. The moonlight on the ground could not stop him at all. He appeared behind Yu Qianling again and punched again. Gu Nan used all his strength in this punch. He even used the Dragon Heart Pendant, which he had not used for a long time, just to hurt his enemy. Crack! Most of Yu Qianling's strength was spread out. He could not react in time and was hit in the spine. The crisp sound of bones breaking rang out, and the moon fox cried out in pain before falling to the ground. Gu Nan. Yu Qianling knew that he had been completely defeated. He immediately shouted, "If you want to find Qin Xuanji, I'll bring you there. If you kill me, you'll become the enemy of the entire alliance." Gu Nan's movements slowed down as he chuckled. "Do you know where she is?" "Of course." Before Yu Qianling could finish speaking, Gu Nan punched him again, knocking him out. The commotion in the teacher's dormitory was like a bright light in the dark of the academy. "Who's inside?" A few teachers who happened to pass by the dormitory door immediately sensed that something was wrong and shouted at them. Lan Si's figure appeared at the door and said in a cold voice, "Mind your own business, all of you scram." Those people's faces immediately darkened, and one of them was even angered. "Who are you? Who gave you the guts to cause trouble in Starry School?" Lan Si glared and wanted to say something, but Gu Nan had already walked out with the moon fox. He did not even look at them. With a wave of his hand, 3 shadow swords shot out, piercing through the throats of those people. "Let's go." Gu Nan's expression did not change at all until the corpses fell to the ground. He held Yu Qianling's body with one hand and said to Lan Si casually. Lan Si stared ahead blankly, unable to adapt to Gu Nan's style. After a while, he hurriedly followed. Half an hour later, near a hidden villa area in 66 Amaterasu, a figure approached. A few patrolmen immediately walked over. "Who is it?" It's Lord Yu." One of them was about to ask, but he suddenly recognized the other person and his expression turned strange. Yu Qianling's face was already swollen. The mask could barely cover his face, and he did not look like himself at all. Yu Qianling asked with a dark expression, "Where is Wang Qin?" The patrolmen looked at each other. The Wang Chun that Yu Qianling mentioned was a lord-level cultivator permanently stationed in this branch of the Bloodline Alliance. How would they know his exact whereabouts? Yu Qianling seemed to know that he was asking in vain. He simply ignored them and disappeared quickly. After a while, in a house deep in the villa area, a bald middle-aged man was hugging two young girls in each arm and laughing heartily. He was teasing his two concubines when his expression suddenly changed and he quickly hid to the side. Immediately after, a moonlight fell and cut the sofa he was sitting on into two. The two girls could not laugh anymore. If the bald man had been one step slower, they would have ended up like the sofa. "Lord, you have to help us," one of them said tearfully. Scram! Unexpectedly, the bald man pushed her away with a dark expression and stared in a certain direction. "Yu Qianling, what do you mean by this? You still dare to ask me what I mean?" Yu Qianling walked in through the window with a similarly cold expression. The bald man was Wang Chun. When he saw Yu Qianling's current appearance, the corners of his mouth twitched. He could not think of anyone who could beat the other party up like this. Even if it was him, he would at most be on par with Yu Qianling. "Your face, Gu Nan," Yu Qianling spat out a name coldly. Yu Qian coldly spat out a name. "He's not the youngest Eternal Domain Realm cultivator in the Star Ocean, but the youngest Tao Master in the entire Star Ocean. He is now at the entrance of the branch. Do as you see fit." Wang Chun took a long time to digest the meaning of Yu Qianling's words. He could not help but gasp. He lowered his head and pondered for a moment. He immediately waved his two concubines away and pulled Yu Qianling to sit down with a smile. "Old Yu, I was muddle-headed this time and believed Qin Xuanji's words. Tell me, what exactly is going on?" Outside the villa area, Gu Nan was sitting leisurely by a lake, looking at the scenery of the lake and mountains. Lan Si stood behind him and asked hesitantly, "Sir, if we let Yu Qianling go just like that, wouldn't we be releasing a tiger back into the mountains?" Gu Nan waved his hand and said, "He's just a small fry. When you master more divine power, you can easily deal with him." As he said this, Gu Nan was looking at his sin value. After breaking through to 302 points due to the serial incidents, there was no more movement. Obviously, Lan Si did not improve during this period. Lan Si nodded vigorously. As if suddenly remembering something, Gu Nan asked, "There's something I've always forgotten to ask you. Where is Lorenza's God Nation? What does it have to do with this world?" Faced with this question, Lan Si did not hesitate and directly told him everything she knew. However, what she knew set off a huge wave in Gu Nan's heart. Chapter 101. More than once, Gu Nan wondered how this world was related to the game in his previous life. Did the things in the game also exist here? Was it a parallel world, or another era in the game world? Until the appearance of Lan Si and her sister, he confirmed one thing: at least the god of flowers, Lorenza, was alive and well in this world. Lan Si's description made Gu Nan truly understand what kind of existence this world was. The world that Lan Si originally lived in was called the World of Gods. The background was similar to the game in Gu Nan's previous life, but not completely the same. It was completely made up of the God's Kingdom and a main world. Gu Nan was now in a place called the World of Gods. This place was made up of 36 main skies and 72 boundary worlds. 36 main skies, 72 boundary worlds. Master of stars, master of the astral world. So this is what it means. When the two worlds were placed in front of Gu Nan, many details of the past appeared in his mind. According to the division of this world, above the break realm was the Master of Stars. Gu Nan originally thought that the Master of Stars was only grade 5, and the power level here should be far inferior to the game in his previous life. But according to Lan Si, the true Masters of the World of Gods were not inferior to the gods at all. There were even existences comparable to the Master Gods. What did the Master Gods mean? Only those above grade 11 were qualified to be called Master God. Existences like the Lord of Holy Light and the King of Darkness and Destruction were only grade 15. In the game, there was no existence above grade 15 at all. In other words, in Gu Nan's previous life, he used up the entire world's sin value to rush to the third transformation of grade 16. Unfortunately, he had just completed his third transformation and transmigrated to this world, starting to build a god's kingdom at grade 5. When the god's kingdom is completed and the divine fire is ignited, wouldn't it be the master of a world? Gu Nan chuckled. Only now did he understand the meaning of the word, Master of Stars. The real Master of Stars corresponded to the gods in his previous life. Gu Nan suddenly felt a little lucky. If it wasn't for Lan Si's appearance and his sudden question, he would probably have to advance to grade 5 to see the essence of the world. The game world from my previous life did exist, so does my transmigration foretell something? Gu Nan rubbed his chin and looked at the mountain peak in the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. That's how it is. I can clearly tell you that even if the two of us join forces, we might not be able to suppress him. Yu Qianling laid out the ins and outs of the entire matter in front of Wang Chen. Then, he sneered as he looked at Wang Chen, who was at a loss and scratching his head. He was so anxious that his hair almost turned white. Wang Chen was really at a loss now. If he had known this would happen, he would never have agreed to Qin Xuanji's terms and asked Yu Qianling to help him deal with Gu Nan. It was impossible for Qin Xuanji to tell everyone who was behind her, so her identity to the public was just a member of the alliance from the 6th star region. What's more, Gu Nan is alone. We have a big family and a big business, so we can't play with him all the time. Wang Chen kept muttering. It seemed that he was trying to find some reasons for himself, but it also seemed that he was saying it to Yu Qianling. But when he finished speaking, he didn't hear Yu Qianling say anything else. He could only say, "The only thing we can do now is to hand over Qin Xuanji. She's just an ordinary member." Qin Xuanji was seriously injured by Gu Nan previously and naturally had to return to the Alliance branch to heal. Now she was staying in the villa area. Yu Qianling still didn't say anything and only sneered. He had seen the Deep Sea King's virtual image in action and knew that Qin Xuanji had a backer, so he didn't say anything at this time. Wang Chen was now in trouble on both sides. No matter which side he jumped in, the result would not be good. But Yu Qianling had no obligation to remind him. Yu Qianling's silence made Wang Chen hesitate. He asked tentatively, "By the way, could it be that Gu Nan used some kind of secret method and is actually not that strong?" "You can try," Yu Qianling said disdainfully. Wang Chen was about to say something when he felt a terrifying aura descend, followed by a loud bang. He quickly ran to the window. He saw a figure floating in the air, and a giant sword over 100 meters long was slashed down by him. Just this blow alone killed at least dozens of people in the villa area. "Get Qin Xuanji out, or I'll slaughter everyone here." Gu Nan's cold voice came. Wang Chen didn't have time to think anymore and directly rushed to the door. He wanted to tie up Qin Xuanji and send her over as soon as possible, before more people died. After all, he was still too slow. Or rather, when someone came knocking on his door like this, as long as he had the guts, he wouldn't sit idly by. Just like that, Gu Nan stood in the void. Immediately, several figures appeared. They were led by 3 men and a woman, and all of them looked angry. One of the old men was so angry that his white hair stood up. He said angrily, "How dare you? I've lived for hundreds of years, but this is the first time I've heard that someone wants to slaughter the Bloodline Alliance." Swoosh! The dark sword light flashed and directly cut the old man in half. His upper body was cut from the right shoulder to the left waist. The cut was extremely smooth, and it slowly slid down. Half of the old man's body fell down, and Gu Nan's figure was revealed behind him, holding a sword with one hand, with a sneer on his face. These people were at most in the nuance realm. With Gu Nan's current strength, he didn't even need to use the blood saber. Just the shadow sword was enough to kill them instantly. You! The remaining people were shocked and angry. When they were about to attack with all their strength, they were stopped by a voice. Everyone, please wait. A female voice came from afar. It was a woman who quickly rushed over and landed between Gu Nan and the people of the branch. This woman's dressing was very similar to that of the old three last, but her temperament was completely different. She gave off a very seductive feeling which was fatal to men. As soon as the woman arrived, she bowed to Gu Nan respectfully and said, "Please show mercy, Mr. Gu. The minister has already gone to capture Qin Xuanji. I'll hand her over to you later." Her words made the rest of the branch members' expressions change. "Madam Sixtails, he just killed old Master Zhao." Sixtails turned around with a sullen expression and said, "Mr. Gu is a distinguished guest of the Alliance. What happened to old Master Zhao was just a misunderstanding. If you have anything to say, talk to Minister Wang." Everyone dared not speak up after being mentioned as the minister, and all of them were flushed with anger. Sixtails pursed her lips in disdain and turned to look at Gu Nan with a sweet smile. "Mr. Gu, why don't you follow me downstairs to rest first?" Gu Nan was still holding his sword, but the sneer on his face became even more pronounced. At the next moment, the sword light flashed again, and the dark tip of the sword pierced through Sixtails' chest, instantly ending her life. Sixtails looked at Gu Nan in disbelief. She could no longer speak due to the severe loss of blood, but she could not figure out why Gu Nan would attack. Chapter 102. Blood splattered in the sky. Gu Nan stood alone in the void with a sword, a drop of blood dripping from the tip of his sword. Sixtails lost her support and instantly fell from the sky, revealing the horrified faces of the people behind her. "You!" Someone pointed at Gu Nan with a trembling finger, but he couldn't utter a complete sentence. Gu Nan didn't intend to let them speak. He instantly pounced at them, and with his amazing strength and speed, he could kill them one by one with his sword. Whoosh! Another refinement realm expert was cut in half. The people of the Bloodline Division finally lost the will to fight back and instantly scattered. No matter how much they served the Alliance, they couldn't risk their lives. Unfortunately, how could they keep up with Gu Nan's speed? The skill Flash Strike was almost prepared for chasing and killing. As far as the eyes could see, Gu Nan's figure was changing every second, constantly appearing behind the people, and every time he swung his sword, he would take a life. In just a few blinks of an eye, he had slaughtered all the bloodline descendants who dared to stand out, leaving only a petite girl. Don't kill me." The girl was already crying and begging for mercy as Gu Nan approached her. She was an extraordinaire who had just advanced and happened to run into some people who came to make trouble, so she rushed out with her seniors. Gu Nan was still expressionless, and the sword in his hand was already in front of the girl, but in the next moment, he slightly paused. The girl noticed this pause and looked up in shock, only to see that Gu Nan's figure was slightly blurred, and his body was gradually turning pitch black. Even his face was swallowed by the blackness that came out of his body. He instantly turned into a pitch-black human figure, and then, under the girl's shocked gaze, the sword in his hand continued to move forward. Puff! Blood splattered everywhere. On the other side, Wang Chen pushed the door open, and Qin Xuanji was sitting peacefully in the room, looking at him with a faint smile. Seeing that Qin Xuanji was still here, Wang Chen seemed to be relieved. Then he said with a straight face, "Miss Qin, it's good that you're still here. Please come with me." Qin Xuanji just looked at him coldly and said disdainfully, "Minister Wang, are you going to hand me over to Gu Nan?" "So what if I am?" Wang Chen said righteously, "You've made such a formidable enemy for the Alliance. What else do you have to say?" Qin Xuanji was slightly stunned. She immediately realized that Yu Qianling probably did not reveal anything about the King of the Deep Sea. Otherwise, no matter how stupid Wang Chen was, he would not go against that person. She then revealed a cold smile. Naturally, she would not be kind enough to remind him. Moreover, do you really think that Gu Nan is going to let you go? Qin Xuanji said, looking at Wang Qin as if he was a fool. Her cold words startled Wang Qin. He finally regained some of his usual rationality, and the uneasiness in his heart began to grow stronger. In the next moment, a black shadow appeared behind him. Who? Wang Qin instantly turned around and shouted angrily. But what he saw was an extremely strange scene. It was a figure wielding a sword. His appearance was exactly the same as Gu Nan's, but even his body and sword were pitch black. This was truly a dark shadow. The black shadow directly slashed down at an amazing speed. Fortunately, Wang Qin was not sneak attacked, so he could hastily draw his saber to fight, and was directly knocked aside by the sword. The black shadow was also knocked back, but he slowly walked over, and in the process, the blackness on his body began to fade little by little. When the blackness completely dissipated, the original body of Gu Nan was revealed. This! Wang Qin looked at him as if he had seen a ghost, and then he could not help but look out of the window. In his perception, Gu Nan had been outside all the time. How could it be? Qin Xuanji looked solemn. Her reaction was faster than Wang Qin's, and she had already looked out of the window. The substitution of the original body and the clone, the exclusive rule. Is this the power you have after breaking through? She could clearly see that Gu Nan's body had turned into a ball of darkness. He had even killed the last girl with a single slash of his sword. Wang Qin now understood what had happened, and his heart was cold. Only people who had reached their level understood what it meant for Gu Nan to be able to do this. It meant that he had initially created his own rule, and it was a sign that he had 1 foot in the break world level. Level 4, or the break world level, was essentially a deep understanding and development of the original God power. The cultivator created his own rule on the basis of the God power. From this point of view, Yu Qianling's level was indeed very high. His reflection rule was almost at the level of level 4. He just needed to accumulate more experience. When Gu Nan reached 300 sin points, he opened up the shadow esoteric substitution, which was also comparable to a normal level 4 rule. The core skill of the shadow power, as the level increased, would open up 3 abilities: hidden shadow, shadow body, and shadow area. These 3 abilities were actually not weak, but the opponents that Gu Nan had encountered had never forced him to use the shadow body. It was only when the profound meaning of shadow displacement was activated that the domineering nature of this ability was revealed. The existence of the shadow body was to allow Gu Nan to freely switch between the original body and the clone. Gu Nan's gaze fell on the faces of the 2 people, and he wore a faint smile on his face. From the very beginning, he had made up his mind to kill the entire division of the Bloodkin, and he wanted to find Qin Xuanji. That was why he let Yu Qianling return, but secretly followed him with a clone. After he met Wang Qin, the clone followed Wang Qin to this place. Mr. Gu. Wang Qin's strength was not as good as Yu Qianling's. After many years of guarding the 66 Amaterasu, his strong heart had long been worn away, and he wanted to beg for mercy. But Gu Nan did not give him a chance. With a flash of the blood-red blade, this dignified Daolord powerhouse's head fell to the ground. At the same time, a bloody mark appeared on Gu Nan's neck. In order to ensure a one-hit kill, he specially switched to the Bloody King's blade. Of course, with Gu Nan's current strength and the terrifying effect of the level 3 blunting effect, the effect of the bloody curse was almost negligible. The injuries from killing Wang Qin were healed in the blink of an eye. Qin Xuanji looked on coldly from the side. The battle cries outside the window continued. That was Gu Nan's clone following his will and loyally carrying out the order to kill the entire division. I didn't expect that you would really dare to come here, Qin Xuanji said to Gu Nan, her face still calm and indifferent. You know that there's a big shot behind me. As she spoke, a light gradually appeared under her feet. A formation that had been inscribed long ago revealed itself. It was the same formation that Qin Xuanji had set up previously. It was a formation to summon the Fourth Order powerhouse, the King of the Deep Sea. This formation could not be moved, and it could only be used for a moment. Qin Xuanji originally thought that it would not be of use. But she also did not expect that Gu Nan would be so daring as to directly kill his way into the Bloodline Alliance's division. She stared coldly at Gu Nan. Since you're courting death, before she could finish her words, she saw Gu Nan slash the ground with his blade. A terrifying shadow power instantly gushed out and directly smashed the formation into pieces. Chapter 103. Qin Xuanji was dead. Her death was no different from that of any other NPC. Gu Nan ended her life with a single slash. That was all. An NPC he had known for a long time had been killed by his own hand. Gu Nan didn't feel much about it. He had seen too many NPCs betray NPCs. He didn't have any extra emotions. Qin Xuanji was no longer of any value to Gu Nan. Leaving her alive would only make her a target for some big shot who could attack him at any time. Naturally, she could only die. Are you sure no one escaped? Gu Nan asked indifferently as he stood outside the villa. Lan Si hurriedly replied, Yes, my lord, a small number of people who wanted to escape were also killed by your doppelgangers. Lan Si was indescribably frightened as she said this. It wasn't that she hadn't seen doppelgangers before. However, Gu Nan's shadow body could split into 2, then into 4. In the end, she couldn't even count how many doppelgangers there were. Soon, she could see that the power of those doppelgangers weakened as they split. They were perfect for slaughtering weak enemies. Gu Nan naturally knew what she was thinking, but he only nodded lightly and didn't say anything. As his strength increased day by day, his methods became more and more varied. It wasn't strange for him to be able to do this. Slaughtering the bloodline branch here is enough to temporarily cut off that big shot's control over this place. Gu Nan took one last look at the villa area and threw down a torch. Boundless flames suddenly rose. The ruins and broken limbs were all engulfed in a sea of fire. Let's go. We should go to the next map. Where? The 6-star region. The immortal and demon world. Killing and the flames of war were still the main theme here. Gu Nan stood on the tall city tower and looked down at the city that belonged to care for one's family. She felt a rare sense of satisfaction in her heart. She didn't know when it started, but she started to like the feeling of looking down at the whole city. It was probably because care for one's family had invested so much effort here that even she couldn't escape its influence. She had reincarnated in many planes, but it was rare to see a plane that was rich in resources and had a complete power system like this one. Even though they had yet to truly conquer this plane, care for one's family had benefited greatly from their gains during this period of time. I really have to thank that guy. Gu Nan's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. He didn't know if he was laughing at someone's generosity or at the impermanence of the world. She recalled what the other party had said before he left, and she couldn't help but feel a little angry. If it wasn't for him deliberately stirring up trouble, he wouldn't have made a move on Yan Xiaoxiao. Who would have thought that a native girl like her would actually be so strong? That strange law was almost on par with his own. Even thinking about it now, Gu Nan could not find a good way to deal with it. But no matter what you do, this place still belongs to me. Gu Nan felt the mountain breeze blowing on his face as he softly muttered to himself. Eldest Mississippi, a figure appeared behind her and bowed as he reported, There's news from 66 Amaterasu. A villa district has been completely massacred. It's suspected to be a branch of the Bloodline Alliance. Gu Nan raised his eyebrows and said, Bloodline Alliance? The family suspects that Gu Nan did it? Do you have any evidence? Gu Nan's question came very quickly, causing the figure to stammer for a moment. No. But Yu Qianling, who attacked just now, is a top-notch bloodline warrior. Hearing this, Gu Nan's eyes narrowed slightly. She placed one hand on the city wall and lightly knocked on it. Even though she was in the immortal demonic plane, she still paid attention to 66 Amaterasu, or rather, she was paying attention to Gu Nan's every move. She always felt that Gu Nan was a very strange person. He seemed to have a very strong purpose, but those purposes came without reason, making it hard for people to understand. Whether it was in the red carp or after going to 66 Amaterasu, it was the same. After a moment of contemplation, she said again, "Continue to keep an eye on 66 Amaterasu. At the same time, send some people to the 6-star region. I have a feeling that the White Mist organization is going to be in trouble." After saying this, she waved her hand to dismiss the figure, but gently hugged a young girl beside her. "If there's danger on the White Mist side, find a chance to hide here, understand?" "Okay." The young girl's face showed some shyness, but she nodded firmly. It was Lin Yunyun. "Dear passengers, Starship X-5698 to the 6-star region is about to depart. Passengers who haven't boarded the ship yet, please hurry up." The female announcer's gentle but urgent voice echoed continuously in the hall, urging the passengers to board the ship as soon as possible. Among the hurried passengers, a young girl turned around and shouted, "Brother, hurry up! It's almost time to board the ship." Behind her, there was a white-clothed young man yawning as he walked over unhurriedly. His expression simply caused the spectators to feel anxious. The young girl stomped her feet anxiously, but the young man just walked on. It took him a lot of effort to catch up at the last moment, and he was finally not stopped at the ticket checkpoint. The young girl rolled her eyes in annoyance. At this moment, she could not be bothered to say anything, and simply pulled the young man forward quickly. The two of them were Gu Nan and Lan Si. Ever since the massacre at the Bloodline branch, Gu Nan had put an end to the matters of 66 Amaterasu and began to head to the 6th-star region. He did not forget that the White Mist organization stood him up, and that the Three Tails had even brought Lin Yunyun there. Well, the key was still to obtain the method of reincarnation mission. If not for that, he could not be bothered with the Three Tails or Lin Yunyun. He would just let them die. Anyway, he had already collected all his sin points. However, since he was going there, he naturally had to get back at them. Being taken advantage of by an NPC was not something a professional player would do. Gu Nan did not know how much the big shot behind Qin Xuanji knew about him, so he did not use his original appearance and name. Instead, he pretended to be Lan Si's brother. After getting along with Gu Nan during this period of time, Lan Si could be considered to have seen Gu Nan's true colors clearly. This bastard was usually a nerd. Where was the ruthlessness and decisiveness he had when he was killing people? He would sleep until noon every day, and apart from eating, he would read some books and watch dramas. Training, learning, and a strict and self-disciplined lifestyle were all non-existent. Gu Nan did not want Lu's family to know about his current situation, so the preparations for the trip this time fell on Lan Si's shoulders. That made Lan Si, who was used to being a pampered missy, go crazy. However, she could not disobey Gu Nan's orders, so she had no choice but to bite the bullet and do the work of an assistant. Actually, Gu Nan could not be blamed for that. After all, he did not need to train to play games, and it was the same for him now. Apart from the fact that he knew how to kill people, he was indeed a nerd. Just as the two of them walked into the depths of the tunnel and were about to board the starship, a man and a woman were also staring at them from afar. "Cousin, that person looks like Lan Si." A young man who seemed to be only 15 or 16 years old said as he pointed to them. She dyed her hair black, and she looks even more beautiful," the cousin said as she looked at Gu Nan and stroked her chin. Chapter 104. The starship to the 6th-star region departed. Gu Nan was like an ordinary traveler, quietly sitting in the starship's banquet hall, gazing at the stars outside. The starry sky of the starry sky realm was indeed a magnificent sight. It was something that was rarely seen in the other worlds of the myriad heavens. Ever since Lan Si fused with the Godstone, Gu Nan had become lazy. Now, he could increase his sin points even if he lay down all day. He no longer cared about the rewards of the reincarnation mission. Working hard for a whole day might not even be as rewarding as sitting down for a day. In just a few days, his sin points had increased to 310 points, and this was the result of Lan Si's busy schedule and not having time to cultivate. Gu Nan's current goal was to go to the 6-star region, find the location of the White Mist organization, and obtain the method to translate the world will. Only by reading a large number of reincarnation missions and finding the ones with the highest rewards would it be worth Gu Nan's time to act. "Sir, are you Mr. Lan Ta?" A respectful voice sounded out by Gu Nan's ears, and he turned around in astonishment to see numerous attendants standing by his side. Gu Nan was currently using the identity of Lan Si's brother, Lan Ta. This identity might not be able to be hidden for long, but as long as the name Gu Nan did not appear in public, it would be enough for him to sneak into the 6th-star region. Once he got there, he did not care if his identity was seen through. At the end of the day, he was not afraid of the rank 4 behind the bloodline carrier. He just needed the starship as a means of transportation. Unless the rank 4 came personally, Gu Nan did not even need to run. He would just crush his way through. He was almost invincible among the rank 3. "I am. What's the matter?" Hearing Gu Nan's affirmative answer, the attendant seemed to be relieved and hurriedly said, "Mr. Lan, your sister, Miss Lan Si, is in the 3rd hall. She seems to have met with some trouble." The starship that Gu Nan and Lan Si were on was a series of flights that only the upper class could afford, so there were not many passengers on board at once. The interior of the starship was also quite luxurious and rich. The 3rd side hall was not far from the main hall, and it was a room for entertainment. Lan Si had always been a playful and active person. Of course, she didn't have time to accompany Gu Nan to watch the stars, so she came here alone to have fun. But with her strength, she actually ran into trouble? Gu Nan frowned slightly. Since he had already boarded the starship, he did not have to worry too much. They could just kill all the passengers and force the captain to head to the 6-star region. However, after arriving here, he realized that things were not as he had imagined. Lan Sike didn't look like she was being bullied. Instead, she glared at the group of people. Opposite her was a group of youths, all of whom were dressed luxuriously. One look was enough to tell that they were no ordinary disciples. Among the onlookers, a young man chuckled and muttered, "Cousin, her brother is here too. There's going to be a good show to watch." The girl he called cousin also smiled helplessly and said, "You little rascal, you only know how to play these kinds of tricks all day long." Although she was complaining, there was a hint of schadenfreude in her tone. Their voices were very low, and they were mixed in the crowd's discussion. Even the people around them couldn't hear them clearly. However, with Gu Nan's physique, their conversation was no different from speaking directly into his ear. Gu Nan's slightly cold gaze swept across the crowd. Just as he was about to grab the two of them, his gaze paused for a moment on the girl. It wasn't because of her appearance or temperament, but because he knew her. Tang Xian, Gu Nan's old acquaintance from the Ming Lu. When Gu Nan first came to the astral realm, he was abducted to the Ming Lu, and it was Tang Xian who brought him into the organization. After that, Tang Xian was one of the main people in charge of the exploration mission of the immortal and demon world. After the mission was completed, Gu Nan left the Ming Lu, but he didn't see her again. He didn't expect to see her on this starship today. Did she also leave the Ming Lu, or did she follow the organization's request to head to the 6-star region? Gu Nan glanced at her. These thoughts flashed across his mind, but he put them aside and slowly walked forward. "What's going on?" He walked up to Lan Si and asked calmly. Lan Si was still staring at the people around her. She didn't know that Gu Nan had arrived. Hearing the voice, she was shocked and quickly turned around. "Brother, brother, brother, why are you here?" She didn't want to disturb Gu Nan, but she didn't expect that someone had already spread the news to him. Gu Nan didn't even need to think about it. It was obvious that Tang Xian's cousin had sent someone to inform him. Before Lan Si could speak, someone in the crowd heard what she said. Someone immediately said, "Hey, you're her brother, right? You came at the right time. Your sister didn't even give Miss Fu face. What do you have to say?" Gu Nan paid no attention to him at all. His gaze swept past them, and he noticed there was a young girl who was surrounded in the middle like a moon surrounded by stars. Obviously, it was Miss Fu. At this time, Lan Si was also narrating what had happened in a low voice. Speaking of which, it was a very simple matter. There was a poker game called 10,000 that was popular in the universe. Ever since Lan Si learned it, she had become an expert. This time, it was inevitable that she would come to play a few rounds. With her level, it was naturally easy for her to kill everyone. This made these young masters feel ashamed, so they thought of asking for help, that Miss Fu. Unfortunately, she had something to do at the last minute. She didn't arrive until Lan Si was about to leave. Lan Si liked to play cards, but she was a very self-conscious person. She left as soon as she said she would. Why would she play another 2 rounds, just because the person who came was a big shot? I heard that she's the daughter of a Dao master in the 6-star region. She's also a famous superstar in the universe. Lan Si described Miss Fu. The 6-star region had always adhered to the ancient tradition. Dojos of various sizes were established, often by the top experts in the eternal domain realm. The masters of these dojos were respectfully called Dao masters. Over time, it even became a separate level, corresponding to the super experts who had comprehended their own nomological laws. According to Gu Nan's understanding, Dao masters could be understood as the 3rd level of profundity. Some of them lived up to their name, such as Yu Qianling and Wei Donghai. Some were just there to make up the numbers, such as Wang Qin. As for this Miss Fu in front of him, Gu Nan really did know her. The universe was a semi-technological plane. All kinds of entertainment industries were quite developed. Singers and movie stars also had great influence. Miss Fu was one of the best. Her real name was Fu Jing. She was a big star who excelled in movies, TV, and music. Even in the 9th-star region, her movies and songs could often be seen. Even though Gu Nan had never cared about these aspects, he would more or less stumble upon these pieces of information. Just as Gu Nan was recalling these pieces of information, Fu Jing also walked up and said, "We're not being aggressive. It's just that Miss Lan's superb card skills are really, let's go." Gu Nan didn't even look at her. He patted Lan Si's shoulder and turned around. Chapter 105. Fu Jing's status was indeed very high. It was not only because of her personal influence. As the beloved daughter of a pathmaster, she was truly the daughter of a wealthy family. Her status was much higher than that of a young lady from a large family. The reason was simple. Fu Jing was the only daughter of the pathmaster, and the pathmaster alone was enough to suppress a large family. It was precisely because of this that she, who'd been doted upon since she was young, felt exceptionally surprised and humiliated when she was directly disregarded by Gu Nan. In fact, she should be thankful. If she had a mission and Gu Nan had no interest in attacking her, she would have been a corpse by now. However, Gu Nan's actions were like a boulder thrown into a pond, causing the crowd to explode. Tang Xian's cousin stood at the side, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. "Oh my God! Lan Si's brother is too fearless. That's Fu Jing we're talking about." Not to mention Fu Jing's power, just her escorts alone were enough to make him suffer. Sure enough, before Fu Jing even said anything, the group of young masters was already enraged. What the hell? Miss Fu hasn't even finished speaking, and he's not giving her any face? I thought he was a smart person, but he's even dumber than his sister. Isn't that right? When they get to the 6-star region, they'll know how stupid they are. To these young masters, they could already foresee how many people would fight to deal with this pair of siblings after they had offended Miss Fu. However, Gu Nan still ignored them. He never cared about what others said. He only cared about what they did and whether they would interfere with what he wanted to do. He brought Lan Si with him but did not leave immediately. Instead, he walked towards a direction in the crowd. There were a few young masters there too. One of them stood up and blocked Gu Nan's way with a sneer. "Brat, I advise you to apologize to Miss Fu or else. MMPH." He could not finish his sentence because Gu Nan did not stop. He grabbed the young master's neck with one hand and flung him against the wall. Bang! Gu Nan's strength was so great that even though it was just a casual movement, the huge impact caused the entire side hall to shake. That young master even spat out blood crazily from his mouth, and he almost spat out his internal organs. There was a moment of silence in the side hall. Then, the faces of the young man's friends changed. "Bastard! What are you doing? How dare you hit?" Bang! With another loud bang, another person was smashed to the side by Gu Nan. However, this time, he casually grabbed the person's hair, causing half of the person's scalp to fall off. Ah! Cries of pain, screams, and blood mixed with minced flesh. Such a terrifying scene immediately caused the side hall to descend into chaos. Countless people began to scream and run out. Even Fu Jing's face turned pale. Although she was well educated, she had devoted herself to her career in the entertainment industry since she was a child. When had she ever seen such a scene? Tang Xian's cousin, Tang Ziwen, also had a pale face. Not only was he shocked by the bloody scene in front of him, but he also had a bad feeling. That guy seemed to be walking towards them. Only Tang Xian's expression was cold. After all, she was from Minglu and had seen countless killing scenes. Thus, she could still maintain her composure. Gu Nan's footsteps seemed slow but were actually fast. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the two of them. Tang Xian no longer held any hope that he would be able to find the two of them directly. She took the lead and said, "Ziwen is just acting like a child. He didn't mean to provoke us. Please forgive him." As she said this, she took a step forward. Her inner chi circulated around her body, and a strange brilliance appeared behind her, causing people to involuntarily look at her. An extraordinaire in the nuance realm. Fu Jing was also looking over. When she saw this scene, she could not help but exclaim. Even though her father was a Taoist master, it was not easy to see an extraordinaire at this level. She did not expect to meet one on this starship. The group of young masters, who were initially at a loss, also looked as though they had seen their savior. Their eyes lit up. Meanwhile, Gu Nan looked at Tang Xian and smiled faintly. "We haven't seen each other for a few months. Don't you recognize me?" Tang Xian was slightly stunned. She stared at Gu Nan's face for a long time but could not find any clues. It was only when Gu Nan casually wiped his face and removed the concealment that she was dumbfounded. "Gu Nan?" Gu Nan nodded and said, "There's something I need to talk to you about. Follow me." As he spoke, Gu Nan did not even look at Tang Ziwen, nor did he care about the people around him. Whether they were shocked or hostile, he did not care about them at all. If this was a game, what Gu Nan needed to do was to pick up Lan Si and look for Tang Xian to initiate a conversation. The other NPCs were meaningless to him. Tang Xian only reacted after a long time. She reluctantly digested everything in front of her and nodded lightly. She was also curious about Gu Nan. Therefore, Tang Xian and Tang Ziwen were added to Gu Nan's team. They stepped on the blood-covered floor and walked out of the side hall. "Wait!" A delicate shout finally rang out. Fu Jing rushed in front of Gu Nan in a few steps. This daughter of the sect master, a famous superstar, stared at Gu Nan with her big eyes, as if she wanted to imprint his face into her memory. Just like that, she stood in front of Gu Nan and watched him walk toward her step by step. She could not help but feel a little frightened, but she kept encouraging herself. Although she did not know what the relationship between the minute's subtlety extraordinaire and this person, moreover, this person had beaten up her friend. Was she going to let him leave? Fu Jing took a deep breath and said, I don't care who you are. Galaxy has its laws. You hurt. The next moment, she felt her neck tighten, and all her words were stuck in her stomach. Her body seemed to be lifted into the air, and suddenly slammed into the wall. No, no. Fu Jing felt her whole body tremble, but the expected pain did not come. Instead, a gentle force came from behind, and she was supported by a pair of big hands. She opened her eyes carefully and finally saw who it was. She was pleasantly surprised and said, Big Brother Lu. With such a huge commotion in the number 3 side hall, it naturally attracted a lot of attention. Fortunately, the person who came just happened to see the scene and was able to save Fu Jing in time. Fu Jing, who was still in a state of shock, finally let out a breath of relief. She spoke with a sobbing tone, Big Brother Lu, you have to help me vent my anger. This guy didn't just randomly beat up people. He even wanted to beat me up. She frequently traveled to the nearby star regions and knew this Big Brother Lu very well. He was a descendant of a prestigious clan that ruled over an entire planet. Even if he wasn't comparable to her family, he wasn't too far off. Furthermore, he was a prodigy and was rumored to be on the stars ranking. As compared to those young masters, he was a true young talent. He would definitely be able to teach that bastard a lesson. But she didn't expect that after her big brother Lu Li saved her, he would face Gu Nan with a change of expression. He would eventually let out a bitter smile and lower his head. Chapter 106. Lu Li just happened to be on his way to the 6-star region. He didn't even know that Fu Jing was here, let alone guess Gu Nan's existence. In fact, in the eyes of many in Lu's family, Gu Nan had completely disappeared, even though the Bloodline Alliance's branch had been slaughtered. He's become stronger again. Lu Li was an expert at the peak of the nuance realm after all. The unfathomable aura on Gu Nan's body allowed him to discern this, and he felt even more helpless in his heart. Gu Nan walked too fast, so much so that the others were left far behind him. Once many people were overtaken by him, it was difficult for them to keep up with his pace, and they could only watch as he walked further and further away. If Lu Li felt helpless, Fu Jing was completely shocked and stunned. She couldn't understand what was happening in front of her. What kind of family background and strength did Lu Li have to apologize to this guy? Brother Lu. She couldn't help but call out in a low voice, but Lu Li hurriedly gave her a look, signaling her to stop talking. Gu Nan was still too lazy to say anything about Lu Li's apology. He just left with his people. From the beginning to the end, he didn't care about Fu Jing's so-called offense. This kind of offense from an NPC only made him feel funny, not angry. It wasn't until after Gu Nan and his people left that Fu Jing finally had the chance to ask Lu Li. Brother Lu, who is that guy? Fu Jing said with a face full of dissatisfaction. She even wanted to wait until they reached the 6-star region and ask someone to cause trouble for Gu Nan. As if reading her mind, Lu Li said in a low voice, Xiao Jing, I advise you not to provoke him again. His name is Gu Nan, and Shanghai Pavilion called him the person with the fastest breakthrough in 100 years. He once defeated Feng Zhuotong with a single slash. Lu Li's calm voice echoed, but Fu Jing's face was dull. She felt as if she was listening to a heavenly book. She did not know who Gu Nan was. She had only come to the 9th-star region on a temporary mission and did not stay for long. However, Feng Zhuotong was famous in the 6-star region. Such a famous eternal domain realm expert on the stars ranking was actually defeated by a single blade? If these words did not come from Lu Li's mouth, Fu Jing would never believe it. Even now, she was still hesitating, and the expression on her face kept changing. He didn't want to provoke a super expert, but he couldn't swallow the anger in his heart. Whatever. If worst comes to worst, I'll just ask my father to make the decision. Fu Jing finally made up her mind, and her expression became firm. Gu Nan had no time to care about what these people were thinking. He walked all the way to the main hall, found a random corner to sit down, and began to reminisce with Tang Xian. Of course, he did not mention Tang Ziwen. The existence of the Ming Lu could not be casually revealed. Although it was said to be reminiscing, it was mostly Gu Nan asking questions, and Tang Xian answering. They talked about her experiences, because Gu Nan's achievements during this period of time had already spread throughout the Ninth Star region. Tang Xian previously thought it was just someone with the same name, but if she still did not understand now, then she would be letting down the training in the Ming Lu. When the mission in the immortal devil world was completed, the people in the Ming Lu did reap a lot of benefit. Even the 6th asteroid belt branch was rewarded with resources for the first time. Tang Xian also took the opportunity to break through to the minute subtlety realm. After her strength improved, it was much easier for her to complete the mission and leave the Ming Lu. She had already retired and treated herself as an ordinary young lady from an aristocratic family. Apart from her outstanding innate talent and tyrannical strength, there was nothing special about her. After all, reincarnation was basically taking over someone else's body. In the minds of ordinary people, it was not a good thing. This was also the reason why the Federation government of the astral realm forbade public reincarnation on the surface. After listening to Tang Xian's experience, Gu Nan nodded slightly and finally asked his real goal. There is an organization called White Mist in the 6th star region. Do you know anything about it? Tang Xian thought for a moment and said, I only know it's an organization of reincarnators. I don't know the exact location. Her family was a medium-sized business family. They often traveled between 2-star regions, so she knew a bit about the 6-star region. Gu Nan was not surprised. White Mist was famous, but not everyone knew the location of their headquarters. If they did, they would have been destroyed many times over. Do you know where I can ask? This time, Tang Xian gave a definite answer. There is a place that I'm sure I know. The time of a star region jump could not be determined. It could only give a rough estimate. Gu Nan and the others were lucky this time. The starship only traveled through the space tunnel for 2 days before reaching the 6th star region. The 6th star region is very different from the 9th star region. Tang Xian sat next to Gu Nan and explained to Gu Nan and Lan Si. There is only one administrative planet here, but it is about 20 times the size of the red carp. Its land area is also far larger than the sum of the 3 planets in the 9th star region. In fact, even without Tang Xian's explanation, Gu Nan and Lan Si could see the planet in the distance. It was just that there was no reference in the sea of stars, so they couldn't tell the size. There was only one habitable planet in the 6th star region, and it was the black-yellow planet in front of them. The name black-yellow had been around since ancient times. The 6th star region was the most ancient star region. Many customs and names followed the ancient customs, even though technology had long taken root in people's hearts. When the starship approached, Gu Nan pointed to the vicinity of the black-yellow planet and said, Are those the dojos? The black-yellow planet was surrounded by a ring of stars, but now there were strange buildings of various sizes on these rings. Some of them were large and prosperous, while others had fallen into ruin, leaving only a few broken walls. Through the glass window of the starship, the magnificent scenery unique to the star rings and the various strange dojos were displayed in front of everyone. That's the star rings! Lan Si sighed, slightly intoxicated. Women always couldn't resist beautiful things. Yes. This wasn't Tang Xian's first time here, so she was very calm and explained the origin of the dojos to them. The dojos must be established by eternal domain cultivators. Only a cultivator's domain can be stable on the star rings. In ancient times, the people of the black-yellow planet didn't know the nature of planets and star rings, so they called the star rings beyond heaven, Tang Xian said with a smile. Anything that can exist in beyond heaven is naturally an immortal's dojo. Gu Nan nodded in understanding. So that's how the term dojo came about. That's how the term dojo came about. The civilization of the astral realm had been flourishing for at least tens of thousands of years. It was said that in the early years, the 9 major star regions were separated from each other. It wasn't until the advent of the interstellar era that the cultivators of the central star region were the first to learn how to jump between star regions and gradually conquer the other star regions. After that, there was 1,000 years of chaos. When everyone's vitality was greatly damaged, they finally sat down to negotiate and jointly establish the Interstellar Federation. The strange civilization of the astral realm wasn't what Gu Nan cared about. He only wanted to know where he was going so that he could ask about the specific location of the White Mist organization. At this moment, Tang Xian suddenly stretched out her finger and pointed to a certain place on the star rings. Do you see that? That's the place you're looking for. The Heavenly Secret Dojo. Gu Nan raised his head to look over, and he saw an especially flourishing place standing towering there. Compared to all the other places in the surroundings, it was simply like a crane amongst a flock of chickens, and it was even to the extent that it had the feeling of looking down upon all the others. If he looked closely, he could vaguely make out 2 ancient words on the plaque at the main entrance of the dojo. Chapter 107. On the vast mysterious yellow planet, there were countless organizations named Heavenly Secrets, but there was only one Heavenly Secrets dojo. For a place to be named after Heavenly Secrets, it was easy to guess what kind of function it had. The Heavenly Secret Dojo is the largest information gathering place in the entire 6th star region. As long as you can afford it, there is no information they can't collect. This was how Tang Xian described the Heavenly Secret Dojo. The Heavenly Secret Path Master is a person who has lived for thousands of years. It is said that he has another identity in the Central Star region. He is one of the higher-ups of the Shanghai Pavilion. Gu Nan smiled and said, "But he's just a Tao Lord, isn't he? No matter how strong a leader was, he was just a leader. He could not compare to a level 4 break world god." Tang Xian couldn't help but frown when she heard that. Don't look down on the Heavenly Secret Path Lord. Even if he is a break world big shot, he has to be treated like an important guest. Gu Nan heard something else from her words. The 6-star area has a break world being? That's right. Yes. Seeing Gu Nan's surprised expression, Tang Xian nodded in satisfaction, and there are 2 of them. Starship finally landed. Gu Nan stepped on the land of the mysterious yellow planet and said to Lan Si behind him, "This new map's monster levels are a bit high." Of course, Lan Si couldn't understand these words, and could only reveal a dumbfounded expression. Gu Nan didn't expect her to understand. He just wanted to complain to her. Originally, he had almost cleared the 9th star region map. If he wanted to, he could even be the local tyrant there for a while. However, after running to the mysterious yellow star, he found that the difficulty of the map had suddenly increased. In the entire astral realm, the 9 galaxies could be roughly divided into 3 grades. Without a doubt, only the central star region could be the first tier. There were slightly more second tier, perhaps 2 or 3. The rest were all at the bottom tier. The 6th star region, on the other hand, worshipped the ancients and produced many powerful cultivators, firmly occupying a second-tier position. On planet Xianhuang, there were 2 powerful break world elites on the surface. There were no less than 10 top-class leaders. There were also many leaders who did not have their own divisions or were affiliated with other organizations. For example, Wei Donghai's dojo was located on the entire mysterious yellow star, and only a few people knew about it, but his strength was not weak at all. Gu Nan walked out with Lan Si. After getting off the starship, neither Lu Li nor Fu Jing appeared again. Instead, Tang Xian invited him to her house as a guest. "You need to make an appointment to go to the major dojos. The Tianji dojo has to be at least 3 days in advance," Tang Xian said with a smile. "During this time, why don't you let me take you around the mysterious yellow star? She knew of Gu Nan's strength and wanted to befriend him on behalf of her family, so she didn't mind being his guide. Lan Si had an active temperament. She had long been curious about the new map. Hearing this, she immediately looked at Gu Nan with sparkling eyes. Although he had to go to the White Mist, Gu Nan was not in a hurry. So, he agreed. There was only one giant continent on planet Xianhuang. The starship Gu Nan and the others were on landed in the south of the continent. It was called the South Coast. The South Coast is very commercial, and all kinds of entertainment are very popular. It is the closest place to the ninth system. Tang Xian took the two of them on the street and introduced them to each other along the way. Gu Nan looked at the antique buildings on the side of the road. It was as if he was back in the world of gods and demons. He did not expect this place to be part of the galaxy world. Just like that, it was an area with advanced technology. Tang Xian seemed to know what Gu Nan was thinking. She said, "I have been to the north before. It is no different from ancient times. There are even feudal dynasties." Gu Nan shook his head. When he was about to speak, there was a noise in front of him. "Martial power, level 3. Ha 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 ha. Duanmu Fan, that piece of trash, has not made any progress in 5 years. If I were him, I would have banged my head on the wall and killed myself, that's right. A piece of trash like him dares to waste the family's resources. He really doesn't know what's good for him." Amidst the laughter, a clear voice suddenly sounded. "Life is full of ups and downs. Don't bully the young for being poor." The voice sounded in front of him. This familiar voice made Gu Nan raise his eyebrows slightly. He could not help but look in that direction. He saw a young man with a head full of red hair standing there. The red-haired young man, Duanmu Fan, had a determined look on his face. It was obvious that he was the one who had said those words. He looked around at the people around him like a victorious general. "You guys, do you dare to make a half-year appointment with me? We will fight it out in half a year's time." "Why not?" the people who had laughed at him before said in unison. Gu Nan watched with great interest. It was rare to see such a pure and natural plot of the main character's counterattack. He turned to look at Tang Xian and saw that she was not surprised. Instead, she had a mocking smile on her face. Duanmu Fan sneered. Just as he was about to speak, a few black shadows flashed in front of him and several weapons fell on him at the same time. These people were all Xiantian realm experts. Although Duanmu Fan had a fortuitous encounter, he had not broken through yet. How could he be a match for them? He did not even have the chance to scream before he was chopped into minced meat. The black shadows then started fighting again. "You're the son of Providence. The treasure of Providence is mine. Don't fight for it. It's yours just because you say so? Who do you think you are?" Some people did not say anything at all and just fought for it. The things they were fighting for were also very interesting. Most of them were Duanmu Fan's belongings. The ornaments on his neck, the rings on his fingers, the strange objects in his arms. There were even people who dug out his eyes and dug out his heart. The few of them fought for a while. One of them grabbed his bloody heart and laughed. "Ah, it's the extraordinary treasure, the golden heart. As expected of the son of Providence. I didn't think that I would become an extraordinary one day." As soon as he finished speaking, he ran away quickly as if he was afraid that he would be targeted by others. Meanwhile, the other people who had snatched the wrong thing could only spit on the ground and admit that they were unlucky. Gu Nan was watching from the side while Lan Si was in a daze. She could not help but ask Tang Xian, "Sister Tang, what are they doing?" Tang Xian said helplessly, "The heaven and earth planet is rich in providence. There are often sons of Providence who are born and bestowed with treasures of Providence to help them cultivate. Since the rise of the northern region King Yi Chen 200 years ago, there have been more and more sons of Providence like him. Therefore, correspondingly, there are people who specialize in snatching their treasures of Providence." Lan Si came to a sudden realization. Duanmu Fan's treasure of Providence is his heart? Yes. Tang Xian nodded. The golden heart can give a cultivator extraordinary comprehension and almost inexhaustible physical strength. It's considered a pretty good treasure of providence. At this point, she shook her head with a hint of mockery. However, his providence is still not good. Otherwise, he would have been able to turn misfortune into fortune. How could it have been snatched away? Chapter 108. Tang Xian could only look at Gu Nan's strange judgment in confusion. However, she began to explain further to Lan Siqi about the children of providence. The children of providence were favored by the world's providence. They would obtain their own treasures of providence through their own fortuitous encounters to help them grow. The king of the north, Yi Chen, was a peerless genius who had debuted 50 years ago and was now known as the #1 Tao master of the continent. He was the most famous child of providence. Legend had it that he was born in a small family at the border. He had been talented since he was young, but he suddenly lost his talent when he was 6 years old. From then on, he carried the title of Trash for 10 years. It was only when Yi Chen was 16 that he suddenly rose in defiance of the natural order. Not only did his cultivation base skyrocket, but he could also learn any martial arts at first glance and master them as soon as he learned them. His comprehension was shockingly strong. He was even the first to shout the famous phrase, "Don't bully the young for being poor," on the Xianhuang planet. After that, it only took Yi Chen 20 years to advance from an acquired stage martial artist all the way to Daolord stage, establishing a huge foundation in the northern region. Fortunately, the favoritism that the children of providence receive isn't endless, Tang Xian said emotionally. Even Yi Chen stayed at the Tao master level for 30 years. Otherwise, she did not finish her sentence, but Gu Nan knew what she was trying to say. If the children of providence could improve infinitely, then they really had nothing to do with it. Gu Nan rubbed his chin when he heard the peculiar existence of the children of providence. No one knew what he was thinking. Meanwhile, Lan Siqi was purely curious. She had never seen such a strange thing in the flowering divine kingdom. How dare those people snatch the treasures when the children of providence are so powerful? Lan Siqi asked curiously. Tang Xian shook her head lightly. The children of providence aren't invincible. Many of them have died over the years. Snatching the treasures of providence before they rise is the best deal. Yi Chen's birth was like the beginning of a big show. Since then, the children of providence emerged one after another everywhere. The treasures of providence they had were different. Some were special treasures, some had eyes that could see through everything, and some even had an old monster living in their rings. As more and more children of providence were discovered, people gradually came to a conclusion. Some people even specifically hunted them down just for the treasures on them. An era that belongs to the protagonist? Gu Nan sneered after listening to Tang Xian's story. Back then, not long after he had transmigrated, when he had just advanced to the second order, he had also met someone with a protagonist template. However, it turned out that it was all Gu Nan's plan. The strange era of protagonists in front of him had never appeared on the mysterious yellow star for tens of thousands of years, but it had appeared in the last 50 years. If it was just a coincidence, Gu Nan didn't believe it. The continent's first Daolord. If there's a Tier 4 powerhouse behind him, or if it's the real first Daolord, then it's natural to give him this title. If Gu Nan could think of this, then he believed that there must be people on the mysterious yellow star who could also think of this. But what did this have to do with him, Gu Nan? He came to the mysterious yellow star just to find trouble with the white mist and learn how to obtain the reincarnation task. If others want to stir up trouble on the mysterious yellow star, it won't hinder him. On the mysterious yellow star, there was a solemn and cold dojo with broken swords stuck in the doorway. Fu Jing, accompanied by a swordsman, slowly walked into the door of the dojo and immediately thanked the swordsman. "Senior Brother Wang, I've troubled you again this time." Senior Brother Wang quickly waved his hand and said, "Miss, don't say that. Since you can find the time to come back to the dojo, all the brothers and sisters are rushing to lead the way for you." Senior Brother Wang's words were half complimentary, but the other half was the truth. Fu Jing had a certain reputation in the entire Star Sea. Needless to say, her fans could be found everywhere on the mysterious yellow planet, her home base. Even in the dojo where martial arts were the norm, it was the same. "Only, since you're back, come in." A majestic but slightly cold voice came from the dojo, but it just happened to ring in Fu Jing's ear. Fu Jing couldn't help but flatten her mouth, quickly said goodbye to Senior Brother Wang, and then quickly walked inside. In a study in the depths of the dojo, a black-haired middle-aged man was waiting for her. The middle-aged man had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. His long hair fell on his shoulders, and the ends of his hair were slightly white. When he was young, he was obviously peerless. At this time, he was slowly wiping the long sword in his hand. Seeing Fu Jing push the door open and enter, he slowly retracted the sword light in his eyes and said calmly, "How was the trip to the 9th Star Field?" "It was smooth there, but it wasn't smooth coming back." Fu Jing suddenly rushed to the middle-aged man's side, grabbed his arm, and said, "Daddy, someone bullied me, you have to help me." This seemingly ordinary middle-aged man turned out to be Fu Jing's father, Fu Yong, who was known as the Sword Dao Master. Fu Yong placed the long sword in his hand on the desk in front of him and chuckled. "Is it a person named Gu Nan?" "Huh? Daddy, you know?" This time, it was Fu Jing's turn to be shocked. She didn't think that even her father would know about a small conflict on the starship. However, Fu Yong didn't tell her how he had taught the other party a lesson. Instead, he said in a serious tone, "Don't worry about this for now, and don't provoke this person. I will deal with everything." Her father's words completely stunned Fu Jing. Her emotions were even more intense than when she was warned by Lu Li. "Why?" Fu Jing couldn't help but blurt out. She couldn't understand it. Forget about Lu Li, why would even her father, who was the symbol of invincibility in her heart, tell her not to provoke this person? Fu Yong looked at her helplessly and shook his head. "I told you to practice martial arts a long time ago, and not to hold concerts and release albums all day long. There are some true geniuses." "True geniuses? Can he compare to Lin Tian?" Fu Jing didn't wait for her father to finish and angrily interrupted him like an angry lion cub. "I've already found the boundless water on this trip. As long as Lin Tian can cure the flame poison in his body, he will definitely be able to step into the Daolord realm in one go. At that time, I will ask him to take revenge for me." Fu Jing's words were like a barrage of cannons. Fu Yong was dumbfounded when he heard it, and then he flew into a rage. "How many times have I told you, you are not allowed to come into contact with those children of destiny?" Fu Yong fiercely slammed his palm on the desk, directly breaking his beloved desk into two halves. Fu Jing was startled by him and felt even more wronged in her heart. She bit her lips and said, "It's too late. I have already given the boundless water to Lin Tian." "Lin Tian? Where is he?" Fu Yong didn't have any of the demeanor of a peerless swordsman as he asked with wide eyes. Fu Jing was a little hesitant and didn't dare to speak for a moment. However, a burst of laughter came from outside the door. Chapter 109. In Fu Yong's study, Fu Yong was trembling with anger when Lin Tian barged in. On the other hand, Fu Jing looked at the young man with admiration and even shyness in her eyes. "Why, you're still calling me Miss Fu?" Lin Tian seemed to have understood something. He took a deep breath and said, "Jing." The conversation between the two of them almost made Fu Yong vomit blood in anger. "Lin Tian, how dare you?" Fu Yong suddenly drew his sword, and a terrifying sword gleam instantly enveloped the young man's body. However, Lin Tian only laughed loudly and raised his hand to throw a punch. His punch seemed sloppy and ordinary, but when it was thrown, there was a faint dragon roar. When the punch hit Fu Yong's sword, Lin Tian's hand was already surrounded by 9 silhouettes of dragons, and he directly pushed the sword back. After forcing Fu Yong back with a punch, Lin Tian did not chase after him. Instead, he smiled apologetically. I've troubled you for the past few days. Please forgive me, uncle. I'll take my leave first. As soon as he finished speaking, he grabbed Fu Jing's waist with one hand and disappeared with her. Lin Tian, who had become a sect master, was too fast. He was so fast that Fu Yong could not react at all. He could only look at the empty study and smash things angrily. However, he did not vent for long. When Lin Tian disappeared completely, he put away his anger and pushed open a secret door behind him. He quickly walked in. Behind the secret door was a strange-looking pitch-black altar. Fu Yong fiddled with it for a while and entered a message. A moment later, 5 silhouettes appeared and landed on one side. Old Fu, you found Lin Tian's whereabouts? Tell me, where is Lin Tian? We can't let him escape this time. If there's another experiment that escapes our control, the world will no longer be under our control. That's right. Take that Yi Chun for example. I'm afraid we'll need 3 of us to take him down at the same time. As soon as the 5 silhouettes appeared, a few of them spoke quickly. They looked rather anxious. Fu Yong suppressed his anger and said coldly, "He's already gone. That bastard Lin Tian has been in my dojo all this time." "What did you say?" This time, the 5 of them looked at him in shock. They could not believe that Fu Yong would make such a low-level mistake. Fu Yong's face darkened as he briefly recounted what had happened after Fu Jing's return. "It was my daughter who brought him in. After that, he probably hid in her room. That's why he was able to hide from me." After listening to Fu Yong's narration, everyone's expression became slightly strange. The experimental body created by the 6 of them had ended up hooking up with Fu Yong's daughter. This was something that no one had expected. "Tianji, did you already know about this?" Fu Yong suddenly looked at one of the phantoms and said angrily. This illusory figure was a blue-robed youth. He held a black fan in his hand and was dressed like a scholar. Only the Heavenly Mystery Downlord could be ranked alongside Fu Yong, and was also known as the Heavenly Mystery Downlord. However, there were very few people in the world who had seen his true appearance, so very few people knew that the Heavenly Mystery Downlord, who was said to have lived for over 1,000 years, actually had such a young appearance. The Heavenly Mystery Downlord sat calmly and said indifferently, "Of course I know. It's just that experimental body number 96 and your daughter met a long time ago. At that time, he hadn't been found by us yet." As he spoke, he passed a thin piece of paper to Fu Yong. Although it was also an illusory figure, the information on it could be seen clearly. Experimental body number 96, Lin Tian, met Fu Jing by chance 7 years ago. 2 months later, he was found by the Dragon Phoenix Tao Lord as a backup experimental body and was included in the observation list. Fu Yong understood the ins and outs of the matter. He could not help but wave his palm angrily, and the secret room instantly shook. Lin Tian and his daughter met too early. It could be said that it was a complete coincidence. If he had not mentioned it this time, the Heavenly Mystery Tao Lord would probably not have noticed this small matter. After that, they definitely came into contact. Unfortunately, he did not pay enough attention to his daughter and actually did not notice it. "All right, let's think about what happens next." Another person spoke. He had the head of a beast and the head of a human. His head was actually half dragon and half phoenix. It was extremely strange. It was the Dragon Phoenix Tao Lord. The Heavenly Mystery Tao Lord coldly smiled and said, "Actually, based on the current situation, it is not necessarily a bad thing." Fu Yong's eyes opened wide. He was about to speak, but the Heavenly Mystery Tao Lord waved his hand and said, "One sword, don't be angry. Listen to me first. According to what you said, Lin Tian is going to find Gu Nan. That is the best outcome." One sword was Fu Yong's title. He laughed and said, "What? Don't tell me that Gu Nan can deal with Lin Tian now?" "Yes. The heavenly mystery Tao Lord put away his fan and seriously said, "My people just found out that an important person is attacking in the ninth system. Their target is Gunan." His words sent chills down everyone's spine. They had spent a few decades planning. Hadn't they just wanted to take that last step? An important person in the break world level. That was the level they dreamed of. With such a figure making a move, Gunan was actually still alive and kicking. The meaning behind this was self-evident. There is a genius like that in the world. The Dragon Phoenix Tao Master had a wry smile and shook his head. Compared to him, the children of luck we have created are nothing. Stop talking about useless things. The heavenly mystery Tao Master interrupted him. His eyes looked crazy. I have good news for everyone. Gunan just applied to enter my training hall. In the courtyard of the Tang family, Tang Xian was holding an application notice. She looked at Gunan strangely. You applied in one day. You are very lucky, Tang Xian said. She was holding the notice that the Heavenly Mystery Tao Hall had allowed Gunan to enter. Gunan did not expect that the moment he settled down in the Tang family, the Heavenly Mystery Tao Hall's notice would come. What do I use to pay for information at the Heavenly Mystery Tao Hall? Gunan asked. An expert at the level of a Tao Lord wouldn't always use the mortal world's currency. Of course, Tang Xian said, special treasures, resources, and techniques are fine. You can even use information to trade, as long as they approve. Gunan nodded. As long as it had value, anything was fine. Money was not an option. Big brother, can I go too? Lan Si looked like a curious baby. She looked at him with her big, shiny eyes. That won't do. You stay here and cultivate properly. Gunan looked gloomy as he spoke. Over the past 2 days, he had felt his sin points were not increasing quickly. So, he decided to supervise Lan Si's practice. Oh! Lan Si suddenly became quiet. She did not dare argue with Gunan. She lowered her head and ran away. After Gunan said goodbye to Tang Xian, he prepared to go to the Heavenly Mystery Tao Hall. Before he left, he had a weird feeling. It was like something was going to happen. If you do not have any special resources, you can help the Heavenly Mystery Tao Hall complete some missions to trade for information, Tang Xian said before Gunan left. Chapter 110. As the only planet in the 6th star sector, the mysterious yellow planet had its own unique cultural environment and unique social structure. The existence of the star ring had elevated the status of a Tao Master. It could even be said that everyone below the Tao Master was an ant. If the Tao Master was unhappy, he could take his entire family and ascend to the star ring while the people below could only watch. If the Tao Master came down every day to kill a few important people, who could stand it? Therefore, the Tao Master's realm in the mysterious yellow planet was like a nuclear weapon. There was a qualitative difference between having one and not having one. Gunan did not choose to fly with his own power. Instead, he followed the staff of the dojo and took a small starship to enter the dojo. 4 players, exploring the various functions of a new map, was one of their interests. Mr. Gu, please follow me. A girl in uniform led the way in front of Gunan. At this time, Gunan was already standing in the Tianji dojo. The star ring of the mysterious yellow planet was made up of some floating matter. Without the support of a domain, it was impossible to stand in a normal position. Therefore, the starship directly landed in the dojo. Gunan nodded and followed the girl into the Tianji dojo. However, he found that the space inside was far larger than it looked from the outside. Cultivators walked and asked questions, but strangely, not a single sound came out. It was as if he was in a silent world. It's space. Gunan frowned slightly and immediately realized the nature of this abnormality. In the Tianji dojo, the space was actually cut into pieces. The space that he walked into was just one of them, while the others were also in different spaces. These pieces of space were barely pieced together, so light could pass through but sound could not. The girl beside him had disappeared and a shadow appeared in front of Gu Nan. This shadow was dressed like a scholar and held a paper fan in his hand. However, he had never opened it. As soon as he appeared, he smiled and nodded. "Dao friend Gu, I have been waiting for you for a long time." Gu Nan looked at him strangely. Just when the scholar thought he would ask questions like, "Who are you?" or "What are you waiting for me for?" Gu Nan said, "I'm not a cultivator, so I'm not your friend." The scholar suddenly choked on his words. Fortunately, he was good at keeping his composure. He only paused for a moment before continuing, "Mr. Gu, you are the Heavenly Secret Path Lord?" Gu Nan raised his eyelids slightly and looked at him with a sizing gaze. It was not difficult to recognize the Heavenly Secret Path Master's identity. Even in the dojo, there weren't many people who could exist in the form of doppelgangers. The Heavenly Secret Path Master's expression did not change. He had a faint smile on his face, but there was a hint of seriousness in the depths of his eyes. From his point of view, Gu Nan's 2 words were more like a clear display of his attitude, an attitude of not deliberately befriending and intentionally avoiding him. Of course, he did not know that Gu Nan treated every NPC like this. This kind of attitude made the Heavenly Secret Path Master, who was used to scheming, somewhat suspicious. Could it be that Gu Nan had already sensed it? The Heavenly Secret Path Master's mind was full of thoughts, but his face was still calm as he said, "My Taoist name is Heavenly Secret. Mr. Gu, why have you come to my Heavenly Secret Dojo? Do you have something to ask?" The people of Mysterious Yellow Planet had a habit of speaking in such a genteel manner. Gu Nan used to go to various planes of different civilizations, so he was used to it. He nodded and said bluntly, "I want to find the location of the White Mist Organization." The rule of communication between players and NPCs was to express their meaning clearly and accurately. This was the easiest way to trigger a mission. "Okay." The Heavenly Secret Path Master did not say anything else. He directly took out an eye-tablet from the void and handed it to Gu Nan. The eye-tablet was also a special product of Mysterious Yellow Planet. It needed to be scanned with the soul. Only experts above the Transcendence level could use it directly. Those below the Transcendence level had to use a tool. The Heavenly Secret Path Master's straightforwardness made Gu Nan somewhat unable to react. However, since the eye-tablet was already in front of him, he had no reason not to accept it. He took it and looked at it. It had to be said that the Heavenly Secret Path Master lived up to the name Heavenly Secret. It was almost impossible for a third party to know about the matter between Gu Nan and the White Mist Organization. However, the Heavenly Secret Path Master could immediately provide detailed information. It was obvious that he had come prepared. This preparation was not because he had anticipated it. Instead, the Heavenly Secret Dojo had already prepared this information and could use it at any time. There were also Path Masters in the White Mist Organization. Naturally, their real headquarters was on the Star Ring. The information given by the Heavenly Secret Path Master clearly pointed out the location. Seeing that Gu Nan was reading attentively, the Heavenly Secret Path Master could not help but smile. Giving him the information that the other party wanted in advance was a trick that the Heavenly Secret Path Master had come up with on the spur of the moment. He believed that the more suspicious a person was, the more they liked to overthink things. Since the information was obtained so easily, the other party would have to consider the authenticity of the information and the price they would have to pay. Moreover, according to his understanding, the more talented a person was, the more they disliked owing favors. They would never take advantage of others for no reason. However, the Heavenly Secret Path Master had miscalculated once again. After reading the information, a smile finally appeared on Gu Nan's face. He cupped his fists and said, "Thank you." Then, under the stunned gaze of the Heavenly Secret Path Master, he turned around and walked out. Even until Gu Nan's figure disappeared, the Heavenly Secret Path Master did not say a word. "Wait." The heavenly secret path master felt as if countless divine beasts were stampeding in his heart. He wanted to ask Gu Nan loudly, "Gu Nan has the nerve to take such extraordinary information away?" Only when Gu Nan was far away did the heavenly secret path master put away the helplessness in his heart. He said to the person beside him, 13. A figure slowly appeared beside the heavenly secret path master. He lowered his head and did not speak. "Secretly spread the news that Gu Nan is going to the White Mist," the heavenly secret path master ordered in a low voice. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Don't reveal Gu Nan's identity. Also, when Gu Nan arrives at the White Mist, arrange for someone to inform him of this matter." The heavenly secret path master opened the fan in his hand and gently waved it. The figure bowed slightly and then disappeared. From beginning to end, he did not make a single sound. Of course, Gu Nan was not embarrassed to take something from someone else for free. In reality, 4 players, everything from an NPC could be obtained at will. It was just that some things had to be paid for and some didn't. It was just like how some resources could be harvested by the roadside, while others could only be obtained by killing monsters. Although he did not understand why the heavenly secret path master would give him this information for free, it did not stop him from taking it and leaving. Players could accept the logic of helping an NPC complete a quest in exchange for a quest reward. However, if an NPC gave the reward first and wanted players to owe him a favor, it would be ridiculous. Favor? No way. Chapter 111. The sky above the star ring was always dusky, the color of the starry sky. The White Mist organization was located in a very special area. This special area was not formed naturally, but was completely man-made. The White Mist was actually surrounded by 11 dojos. What kind of concept was 11 dojos? On the entire mysterious yellow planet, there were probably no more than 200 of them, and White Mist alone had 11 of them. Although not all of the 11 dojos belonged to the White Mist, and some only cooperated with each other, one could see the strength of the White Mist. Gu Nan stepped on the star ring, calmly looking at the 11 dojos in front of him. He was fearless. Compared to the time when he slaughtered the bloodline descendants, his injuries had completely recovered, and all his skills and methods were activated. His strength had truly reached the peak of the 3rd stage. White Mist. Gu Nan smiled as he looked in front of him. There was a thin layer of mist shrouding the center of the 11 dojos, perhaps the origin of the name White Mist. Gu Nan flipped his right hand and the pitch-black shadow sword appeared. With his current strength, the situation where he needed to use the blood blade was becoming less and less. "Sir, please wait." A clear voice came from the side, and a figure appeared next to Gu Nan. This person was also dressed like a scholar, and his clothes and temperament were similar to the heavenly secret dojo lord. Even the folding fan in his hand was the same style. The scholar cupped his hands and said, "Heavenly secret dojo's Wu Ding has come to save Sir's life." Wu Ding lowered his head as he said this, but there was a faint smile on his lips. Even if the other party's strength and cultivation were above his, as the direct disciple of the heavenly secret dojo, Wu Ding had his own pride. What's more, this trip was indeed to save the other party's life. Wu Ding cupped his hands, but after waiting for a long time for Gu Nan to reply, he couldn't help but raise his head in confusion. Gu Nan's figure was long gone, and the latter had already gone far away. This disciple of the heavenly secret dojo unconsciously blushed. Ever since he entered the heavenly secret dojo, no one dared to ignore him like this. But his master's orders could not be disobeyed. Wu Ding could only rush in front of Gu Nan and loudly say, "Does Milord still remember Fu Jing? A great enemy is coming. Don't you want to know who it is?" Gu Nan didn't even look at him. He casually slapped Wu Ding's face. Wu Ding's whole body was slapped away, and he even lost a few teeth. Although Gu Nan had not said anything, his meaning had been clearly expressed. Whoever he loved, it was up to him. On the other side of the star ring, Lin Tian wrapped an arm around Fu Jing's waist and brought her to an ancient dojo. This dojo was slightly dilapidated, as if no one had taken care of it for a long time. Fu Jing couldn't help but ask in puzzlement, Lin Tian, this is? Lin Tian smiled and said, this is the old site of a dojo that I accidentally discovered when I was traveling. Very few people know about it, so it couldn't be a better place to take refuge. But now I don't need it. Fu Jing nodded in realization. No wonder Lin Tian had provoked so many enemies, yet he had been able to avoid the search of so many forces. It turned out that he had a dojo in advance. His luck was a little too good. Now that I've become a Dao Lord, I also have the qualifications to have my own dojo. Lin Tian looked at the starry sky and suddenly said with great pride, 9 dragons refining body, open for me. Following Lin Tian's shout, 9 illusory golden dragons emerged from his body and began to revolve around him. Then, they began to expand step by step. This was Lin Tian's unique 9 dragons domain. With this as a foundation, he could quickly gather the star ring and completely stabilize the surrounding space. As the 9 dragons domain continued to expand, not only did the entire dojo shine with golden light, but the huge commotion also attracted the attention of the dojo. A young girl was the first to rush out. Big brother Lin Tian. The young girl threw herself into Lin Tian's arms. Good Ling-er, you really missed me the most. Lin Tian smiled as he rubbed the young girl's head and said to Fu Jing, this is Ling. She grew up with me and is like a little sister to me. Fu Jing, who was originally staring at Lin Tian, heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. Just as she was about to speak, another person walked out of the dojo. This time, it was not one person, but more than 10 women walked out one after another. Each of their expressions and temperaments had their own merits, but all of them were devastatingly beautiful. Lin Tian, you bastard, you still know to come back? Brother Tian, why did you leave for so long this time? Brother Lin, Fu Jing's face was a little stiff. At the White Mist Organization's location, Gu Nan directly rushed into the 11 dojo alone with his sword. Who are you? How dare you trespass? Sword light flashed, and before the disciple had the chance to announce the name of the dojo, he had already become a ghost under Gu Nan's sword. Gu Nan's footsteps did not stop at all, and he continued to walk forward. Unlike the time when he killed Qin Xuanji, this time, Gu Nan's goal was the foundation of the White Mist and the method to obtain the reincarnation mission, so he did not care about alerting the enemy. After all, the 2 commanders of the White Mist would definitely not retreat before the battle, otherwise the White Mist organization would immediately be destroyed. Enemy attack. Enemy attack. Detecting target's danger level. Target's danger level. Downlord level, requesting to activate the Annihilation Formation. A series of sharp whistles rang out, and the 11 dojos simultaneously entered a state of preparation for battle. Orders were passed down one after another, showing their extremely high tactical attainment. In the next moment, the star ring under Gu Nan's feet suddenly became thin, and thick white mist began to surround it. This mist was an extremely corrosive gas, and ordinary extraordinaires would try their best to resist it, but it was useless against Gu Nan. Just like that, he walked out of the mist step by step, already holding the blood saber in his hand. With a casual slash, the entire formation was shattered with a loud bang. The initial use of the blood saber was to attack non-living units to avoid the curse that came with it. The formation is broken. Inform the headquarters immediately. The formation. The command headquarters of the White Mist Organization continuously received messages from the dojos, and then suddenly fell silent, as if all the signals had been forcibly cut off. However, the meaning of the last message was still clearly expressed. How is this possible? It hasn't even been a minute since the news of the enemy attack came, and the Annihilation Formation is broken just like that. Our communication with the dojos is through the formation itself. Now that all the signals have been cut off, I'm afraid, the command headquarters was instantly in a mess. All the leaders did not know what to do at the moment, so they could only send someone to inform the higher-ups. The higher-ups came faster than expected. An old man with white hair and a beard quickly rushed over. It was Elder Cheen, who had previously gone to the 9th star region. "Why are you all panicking?" Elder Cheen shouted as soon as he appeared. The enemy was prepared, and they broke the formation in an instant. "What's so surprising about that? Bring up the image in front of us immediately." Although Elder Cheen's voice was stern, it helped everyone find their backbone, and they immediately calmed down. Only then did they remember to find out who the enemy was. However, when the figure of a man in white with a black sword slowly appeared on the image screen, it was Elder Cheen's turn to be dumbfounded. His face quickly turned pale, and he almost lost his balance. A few people behind him hurriedly supported him. "Elder, are you all right?" One of them supported Elder Cheen with both hands and asked with concern. Chapter 112. Gu Nan held his sword in one hand as he slowly walked out of the white fog that enveloped the formation. He didn't stop walking. He passed by all the dojos and headed for the headquarters of the white fog. Everyone could see his goal. Several young boys and girls rushed out from the front. The leader shouted, "Evil thief, how dare you! Today I will." With a slash of the sword, the children were cut in half at the waist. Then there was a scream from the front. A woman ran over with red eyes. "They are just a group of children. How could you?" Another slash. Then there was a man's angry shout. "How could you do this to a girl who is so weak?" "You," one slash. Obviously, there were ordinary members in the white fog. They ran out one after another, shouting different lines. All of them were criticizing Gu Nan. However, whether it was criticism or abuse, or whether it was reasonable or not, Gu Nan's response was always one slash. He was only here to kill. It didn't matter who was right or wrong, only the living had the right to reason. Corpses fell in front of Gu Nan one after another. Blood mixed with the stars, showing a strange sense of beauty. Elder Cheen, who was in the command center, was already anxious when he saw people going out to fight bravely. He could only give the order to evacuate all members. He could see that Gu Nan was here for revenge. He killed everyone he saw and didn't give anyone a chance to speak. Ordinary powerhouses were no match for him. He could only ask for help from those few. There were many powerhouses in the white fog. Although it was impossible for all of them to be on standby at the headquarters, there were always some powerhouses who stayed behind to guard the headquarters. Wei Donghai put the long sword on his waist. With a cold expression, he slowly walked out of the house. "Father, are you going to fight Gu Nan to the death?" Suddenly, Wei Ro was already standing at the side, and a worried expression hung on her face. Wei Donghai just shook his head gently and didn't say anything. Wei Donghai wasn't sure if he could defeat or even kill Gu Nan. However, he was quite confident in his sword. Even if he couldn't defeat him, he could at least delay him for a while. After all, the great commander was in seclusion at the headquarters. Wei Donghai? Wei Donghai was shocked when he heard a cold laugh. How could they be here so soon? He suddenly turned around and saw that Gu Nan's figure was already not far away. He was still wearing a moon-white robe inlaid with gold, and he held a pitch-black longsword in his right hand. He looked no different from before. However, it was as if his aura did not exist. Apart from his sight, Wei Donghai could not sense him in any other way. The shadow power at the profound meaning level was finally starting to show its power as one of the supreme laws. Light and shadow were two sides of the same coin. The tyranny of light was enough to suppress everything, while the concealment of shadow could completely erase itself from the world. Wei Donghai's heart sank. He knew that Gu Nan's strength had broken through again. His realm alone was probably not weaker than his own. "I can't wait any longer. I must strike first." Even Wei Donghai himself did not expect that Gu Nan's appearance would put such great pressure on him that he had no choice but to strike first. Unlike Gu Nan, who only used weapons as equipment, Wei Donghai was a person who was truly devoted to the sword. From the moment he made up his mind to wield his sword, his spirit, energy, and spirit suddenly rose and became incomparably sharp. A dot of starlight landed on Gu Nan's chest. Wei Donghai's sword was so fast that it was impossible to dodge, and Gu Nan did not even think about dodging it. Blood began to seep out and slid down Gu Nan's white robe, but it did not leave a single mark on it. It was like a smooth metal surface that was not stained by blood at all. This was Wei Donghai's first time fighting with Gu Nan. He had a bad feeling that the sword had stabbed him so easily. Gu Nan smiled sinisterly. He grabbed Wei Donghai's sword with his left hand and stabbed the longsword in his right hand at his opponent's abdomen. Wei Donghai was a master swordsman. When had he ever seen such a gangster fighting style? All the swordsmanship he had learned was based on the premise that the enemy would not dare to touch the sword. But when the longsword was directly grabbed by someone, the swordsmanship became a joke. He twisted the longsword crazily, and the blade scraped the flesh of Gu Nan's left hand. One could almost see the white bone inside, but Gu Nan had no intention of letting go. With the passivation effect, the feeling of pain had long been reduced to the extreme. Wei Donghai could not do something like letting go of his sword, so he could only watch as the shadow sword struck and pierced his abdomen. Gu Nan smiled and lifted his leg to kick him to the side. The injuries on his body and hands began to recover quickly. "Father!" Wei Ro saw this scene from afar. She immediately rushed over with red eyes and supported the staggering Wei Donghai with tears in her eyes. Wei Donghai's face was ashen as he clutched his chest. Blood was gushing out continuously, and he felt extremely aggrieved. When faced with an enemy like Gu Nan, experts like them, who were experts in the traditional sense, could be completely described as having no idea where to start. They could not defeat him head-on, they could not win by exchanging injuries, and they could not exhaust the other party without getting injured. This was the reason why Gu Nan chose agility in the first place. It was because he had unparalleled speed that he could guarantee that he would not be kite. There was no longer any blood seeping out of Gu Nan's chest. The injuries on his hand were healing at a speed that was almost visible to the naked eye. Flesh was growing out bit by bit, and it was a hair-raising scene. "Move away!" Wei Donghai pushed his daughter away and held his sword, wanting to continue fighting. But Gu Nan's sword had obviously caused him a serious injury. At this moment, even his footsteps were a little unstable. In contrast to his current situation, there was also the bitterness in his heart. Wei Donghai's divine art, domain, and laws were all for his sword. He used all means to make sure that his sword could stab the enemy, and it would be best if it could kill in one strike. But now, there was someone who was not afraid of being stabbed, so what else could he do? This was like a mage player who painstakingly cast a large number of spell penetration spells, but the enemy was purely health points. His spells were like tickles to the enemy. As Gu Nan walked forward step by step, Wei Ro saw this and suddenly ran between the two of them. She looked at Gu Nan coldly with a determined expression. Wei Donghai was instantly shocked and shouted angrily, "What are you doing? Move away!" "Father, it's my turn to protect you." Wei Ro looked at Gu Nan with a determined expression and said, "Don't hurt my father. If you have any grudges, take it out on me." Swoosh! The shadow sword slashed from bottom to top, and Wei Ro's entire body was directly cut into two halves. Blood and flesh splattered on Wei Donghai's face, reflecting his incomparably pale complexion. Chapter 113. Of course, Gu Nan could hear what the NPCs were saying. He was not deaf. It was just that he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Wei Ro, and what she said was so funny that even Gu Nan couldn't help but respond to her. Wei Donghai was looking at the blood rain with confusion. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. "I want you die." In the next moment, Wei Donghai's area, rules and god powers all exploded. The sword light was faster and sharper than before. The sword still pierced Gu Nan without any hindrance, but on Wei Donghai's side, the sensation of the sword's blade was completely different. He suddenly raised his head and noticed it was not Gu Nan in front of him. It was just a black shadow. Shadow body swap. Wei Donghai used all of his power to attack, but Gu Nan did not want to take it head-on. Good players knew how to deal damage. They knew which skills could be eaten and which could be dodged. The shadow body raised the sword and slashed. Wei Donghai quickly dodged, but Gu Nan's shadow suddenly appeared behind him. The sword was coming. Good timing. Wei Donghai's eyes looked cold. His body paused. The sword strangely turned around and went for Gu Nan. He used a very good sword skill to change the path of his sword. He created a situation where both sides were hurt. Wei Ro's death made Wei Donghai crazy. He only wanted to kill Gu Nan. He did not care about his own life. But the two swords hit him at the same time. The pain from his back did not make Wei Donghai frown. Gu Nan, who was turning into a black shadow, made him feel like he had fallen into an ice cellar. He struggled to turn around. The person behind him had turned back into Gu Nan's face. Exclusive rule. He used a shaking voice to say those words. His vision started to turn black. For a cultivator like him, being injured by two swords in a row was like losing half of his life. Wei Donghai was sure Gu Nan's skill was not an illusion. He had switched bodies. Only people who were going to break the world could have such an invincible rule. It was like Yu Qianling. His exclusive rule was a reflection. Of course, this man-made rule wasn't truly invincible. There were always all sorts of weaknesses. Yu Qianling's reflection was afraid of illegal nomological attacks, and Gu Nan's displacement also had a weakness. But at this moment, Wei Donghai was no longer allowed to probe. He didn't have much time left. Kill. The sacred swordsman unleashed the last of his strength. A sword light swept across and enveloped both Gu Nan's body and shadow body at the same time. This was the only way he could think of to break out of this situation. Wei Donghai's sword light was still as fast as before. It struck two enemies almost at the same time, cutting them in half at the waist. But what he unfolded were only two streaks of black mist, and in the blink of an eye, they turned back into shadow bodies, both of them. Wei Donghai was stunned. A sense of danger suddenly arose in his heart, and his body started to go out of control. Pucci! A sword pierced through his chest. The sword came from behind him. It was the third shadow body. Gu Nan was standing on the side. He was defending Donghai. He was going to use his life to attack. He took the sword and pierced through his body. He wanted to stab the enemy behind him. As Wei Donghai's body slowly fell, it proved that Gu Nan had been worrying too much. Almost at the same time that Wei Donghai fell, an indescribable presence descended. A shadow appeared next to Wei Donghai. The person who came was a tall man. He wore a silver-white mask. The mask had a weird human face drawn on it. Gu Nan recognized the picture. In some ancient legend, the face represented a king. I did not expect I would be too late. The person who came sighed. He lowered his head. It was as if he was sighing that he could not save his old friend. Wei Donghai didn't seem to be completely dead. He felt a familiar presence. He opened his eyes and struggled to speak. "Commander, avenge me." As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't even wait for the commander's reply before he died. The commander stretched out his hand and closed his eyelids. He then turned to look at Gu Nan. "Your Excellency, you still dare to show yourself in public. Aren't you afraid that the King of the Deep Sea will attack again?" Gu Nan knew who he was talking about, but he didn't answer the question. "You are the commander of the White Mist? Hand over the method of obtaining the world mission, and I can spare your life." The commander shook his head. "The translation method is the foundation of the reincarnation organization. How can I hand it over to you?" Gu Nan nodded. He raised his hand and slashed with his sword. The Grand Commander was taken aback. He didn't expect that Gu Nan would attack without even greeting him while he was still talking. However, such a sword attack couldn't affect the commander. He raised his hand slowly, and Gu Nan's sword passed through his hand and fell to the ground. However, his hand wasn't injured. It was as if he hadn't been hit at all. Upon closer inspection, one would find that his palm had been cut open. However, there was some fine yellow sand at the wound, which healed in the blink of an eye. Sand transformation? It's the power of the earth Hades. Gu Nan was extremely knowledgeable. He recognized the commander's origin at a glance. Most of the skills of the earth lineage had such characteristics. They were thick, solid, and extremely difficult to kill. The commander turned part of his body into sand and easily dodged the attack. He then said, "A simple swordsman like you can't hurt me." His voice sounded distant, and there was also a sense of superiority. You humans have unparalleled talent in terms of comprehension and learning, but your understanding of the nature of the laws is still far from it. The commander was a natural bloodline descendant. Just as Third Tail said, powerhouses like him were extremely proud of their bloodline. While acknowledging the talent of humans, he also mercilessly attacked their shortcomings. As soon as he finished speaking, wisps of fine sand floated and surrounded Gu Nan unknowingly. In the next moment, the fine sand suddenly shrank and almost crushed Gu Nan. Unfortunately, it was only a shadow body that was crushed. The shadow body was squeezed into a ball of black gas, but it recovered in an instant. Clones? Let's see where you can run to. The commander had a cold and expressionless face under his king's mask. Immediately after, fine sand began to surround the other shadow bodies of Gu Nan before it suddenly shrank. "It's over." The commander muttered to himself softly as he watched the yellow sand tighten. There was no longer any aura of life in the air. He didn't doubt the weakness of his opponent. In fact, he didn't think that Gu Nan would be that powerful. Even if Lin Li was a Dao master and had killed Wei Donghai easily, it was just a joke in the commander's eyes. That was because he had been stuck in the Dao master realm for too long. Although he didn't succeed in breaking through after countless years of accumulation, it allowed his power to accumulate infinitely at this level. Given his current power, he could easily kill a person of Wei Donghai's level with just this move of shrinking sand. Bloodline descendants could increase their power through accumulation over time. That was the most terrifying thing about them. The commander said that he was in seclusion, but he was actually in a deep sleep.